18 years ago, a massive tower suddenly erupted from the ground, unleashing bolts of crimson lightning that engulfed the entire region, and from that moment, bizarre portals appeared, spilling out swarms of giant monsters, bringing unfathomable danger. Some lucky individuals awakened with superpowers during the chaos. They are called players, and they have become the beacon of hope for humanity. A new power structure emerged, and an entire economy has now formed around these players. Players aren't just symbols of wealth. They are heroes revered by the world, while our protagonist is just a delivery guy living an incredibly ordinary life. Still harboring the sadness of not being the chosen one, or to put it plainly, being as average as it gets, he struggles to carry 2 heavy boxes to a door and knocks. A suave man opens the door, smiles, and says, "Oh, you're here. Just leave the food on that table over there." It's a luxurious room where quite a few people are gathered, likely waiting for their meal. The guy just bows his head, awkwardly replies, "Sorry for being late." "Enjoy your meal," he says, then hurries away. While waiting at a red light on his electric bike, he looks around at the skyscrapers with their modern design, which only makes the delivery guy's ordinariness stand out even more. A giant screen on the building opposite catches his eye, making him stare in awe, even removing his helmet visor that was obstructing his view. That person is someone who possesses special abilities thanks to their awakening. Looking at him, anyone could easily recognize his extraordinary qualities as if he were radiating a halo. The protagonist keeps gazing at the person on the screen, a holder of special powers. When facing enemies, he radiates an icy aura from his entire body. That icy aura even chills the very air they breathe. People with such powers are like they're hacking the game. A Superman among supermen, he easily unleashes a powerful gust of wind that freezes the monsters, and although those monsters are right in front of him, they can't even touch him. Because they've been frozen, in other words, they are monster-tier players. Shouts from somewhere cut off the protagonist's train of thought as a man in a car sticks his head out. Impatiently, he screams, "The light's green, move it!" The guy, startled, turns back and stammers, I'm sorry." And so another busy day ends. He arrives home when it's pitch black. Under the dim light, he is organizing the packages on his bike when a pile of letters stuffed in the mailbox catches his eye. Kim Jigu looks at them surprised and rushes over. Holding each letter in his hand, he carefully reads them: hospital bills, mail from school, and after checking them all, he smiles and sighs. "What else were you expecting, man?" Kim Jigu enters the house and calls out, "I'm home." Dudung, closing her room door, hears his voice and turns around with a smile. "Brother, you're back. You've worked so hard." Seeing his sister still up, the protagonist asks in surprise, "Why aren't you asleep yet?" The girl tiptoes over and replies, "I was doing homework, hey." He walks to their mother's room and asks, "Is Mom asleep?" Dudung answers, "Yeah, brother, she just fell asleep. She slept better today than usual." Seeing her sleeping soundly in bed, he sighs with relief. "Thank goodness." The protagonist closes the door and softly asks his sister, "By the way, did you massage Mom's legs today?" But just as he turns his head, he sees her holding a cake with the number 18 on it. A bright smile on her face, whispering, "Happy birthday, brother." He is absolutely stunned. He asks her, "Where did you get the money to buy this cake?" "Wait, I didn't use the money you gave me for new clothes, if that's what you're thinking." Hearing him, she jokes, pointing at the cake. "I'm rich, okay. If you don't plan on eating it, I'll eat it all by myself." He looks at his little sister, who is still playfully teasing him. "You know I love chocolate cake, right? I bought this from a famous shop, hey. He looks at her secretly, thinking how her clothes are already worn thin. Dudung, not noticing his gaze, continues to chat away innocently about buying the cake. Suddenly, the protagonist calls her name Dudung. She looks at him, surprised. "Huh." He ruffles her hair, smiling happily. "Thank you, I'm so happy. It's thanks to my little sister that I get to have a birthday cake." She giggles. Hey, so do you want to read your mail before eating the cake?" The protagonist holds up the letter she gave him, eyes crinkling as he laughs. "Let's see it then. Let me read the letter you wrote." He opens the letter, but one look at the contents makes him jump in surprise. Seeing his expression, she chuckles, "Hey." The text on it reads, "Player invitation." He holds it with trembling hands, unable to believe what is happening right in front of him. Overwhelmed, he bursts into tears and shouts, "I'm a player." Dudung is already tearing up too, but she still smiles, replying, Hey, I wanted to surprise you, so I took it out of the mailbox." She jumps into his arms, happily saying, "Congratulations, brother." He thinks happily, "I did it. I actually did it." His eyes are filled with determination and hope. Our lives can finally change. He looks at his mother sleeping in the room and thinks, as long as I can achieve this. As night fades into the morning of a new day, the protagonist arrives early at the Korea Player Association building. It is a towering skyscraper. It is so high that looking up makes you dizzy. The protagonist stares at it, unable to stop himself from exclaiming, "Whoa!" His hands tremble even though he is clenching them tight. Finally, But then the protagonist closes his eyes, trying to steady himself. No. Now is not the time to get emotional. He opens his eyes and stares straight at the building in front of him. This is just the beginning. As soon as he walks in, a staff member is waiting warmly, saying, "Congratulations, player Kim Jigu." He replies awkwardly, yes. She tells the protagonist, "Just say status window. Your player information will appear. Why don't you try it?" He heard her, then quickly checked his status window, and sure enough, his info popped right up. Staring at the screen, he asked her, confused, "What's with that question mark next to the special ability section?" She was visibly stunned, then suddenly lit up and hurried to say, Congratulations! You're an awakened one with a special ability. That question mark just means you haven't unlocked your power yet." The protagonist stared at the text on the system screen, unable to believe his own eyes. A special ability was actually real. A split second later, he was so hyped he couldn't even find the words. "I'm an awakened one." His body wouldn't stop shaking while the girl beside him cheered out loud, "Yes, congratulations, you're an awakened one." And little did they know their entire conversation had been overheard by Zukvu nearby. Noticing the protagonist's trembling, she tried to calm him down. "Just relax, the instructor will explain everything to you in a bit." Just then, a voice cut in. "Excuse me." She turned around delighted. "Oh, instructor, you're here?" But the moment she saw who was behind her, she was totally shocked. "Player Zukvu." The protagonist heard the name and couldn't help but be taken aback as well. Player Zukvu looked at them and asked, "If it's not a problem, could I be his guide?" Hearing that the protagonist pointed at himself, caught off guard. Me." Meanwhile, the girl was already blushing at the sight of Zukvu. He answered the guy's question honestly. "That's right. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I happened to hear your conversation." Zukvu looked at him with a serious expression and continued, "You're an awakened one." Hearing that the protagonist's hands and feet started shaking uncontrollably. Thinking to himself, his mind a mess, "I'm starting to panic again." The girl, now calm, said, "Well, usually that's not allowed." Then blushing, she waved her hands. "But I think I can let it slide this time. My authority allows for it, so don't worry, Zukvu. I'm not just a manager. I'm a professional manager with 15 years of experience." Hearing her consent, he replied, "Thank you." The protagonist stood before the dimensional gate, stunned, asking, "Is this the gate leading into the tower?" Zukvu asked him, "You going in?" The protagonist looked at him and replied, "Yes." He stared intently at the gate, still feeling wary. "Yes," Zukvu said. "You don't need to be so worried." The protagonist stammered, "Right." Then they entered this gate together. When they arrived, Kim Jigu froze and asked, "Zukvu, Mr. Zukvu?" And unfortunately, his voice had attracted a horde of monsters. He asked, "Are there usually this many monsters on the first floor?" As they rushed toward them, Zukvu calmly said, "It seems the spawn times occasionally overlap, causing a monster pileup, but this is the first time I've seen it too." The protagonist was absolutely shocked. "Isn't that a huge problem?" Zukvu approached the monsters while explaining, "This is actually a blessing in disguise. Now I can explain everything to you much faster." He asked him, "Do you know about the 100 goblin test?" The protagonist stumbled, Yeah, I heard that even though the results are great, it's banned because it's too dangerous." Zukvu said, "Exactly. It's a test to measure the potential of a player under level 10. Their potential is calculated by observing how long it takes them to kill 100 goblins without using any skills." Then he dashed toward them, saying, "If you clear them in 4 to 5 hours, you've got the potential to be a high-level player." He moved as if he had motors in his legs. Every single one was taken down before it even realized the danger. He moved as if these techniques were second nature to him. Dispatching them while talking as if it were no big deal, he said, 2 to 3 hours means the potential to be a ranker. His movements were incredibly sharp and powerful. A single kick took down the goblins surrounding him. Clearing them all means you have the potential to be a high ranker. The protagonist stared at him in awe. "Amazing." Zukvu's eyes were razor sharp. He said, "And finally, the completion time for an awakened one is..." He did a spinning kick, creating a whirlwind that knocked them off balance, then channeled his power and touched one of them. The goblins were instantly frozen solid. He finished his sentence, 10 minutes. The protagonist's eyes went wide. So this is what an awakened one is. Watching his calm demeanor, the protagonist couldn't help but admire him. Truly extraordinary. Zukvu nonchalantly checked his watch and said, 47 seconds. Suddenly panicked, the protagonist ran over and asked, Zukvu? Wait. A high ranker takes an hour, but an awakened one takes 10 minutes. Zukvu replied, strength that takes ordinary players years to achieve. An awakened one only needs a few months. The potential and growth speed of an awakened one are far beyond your imagination. He asked the protagonist, Jigu, have you heard of the Angela Guild? He replied to Zukvu, yeah, I heard the guildmaster is a very young ranker. Zukvu said, exactly. Most members in that guild are extraordinarily talented and completed the goblin test in under 3 hours. My plan is to create the strongest guild, surpassing even Angela. That's why talented players, especially awakened ones, like you, Jigu, are essential. The protagonist was stunned to hear him say that. Zukvu said, I hope you continue to break your limits until that day, so we can meet again inside the tower. I think I've rambled on too much. Saying that, he touched the frozen monster from before, and the ice turned to liquid, freeing it. He looked at him and said, shall we begin your first hunt? It bared its fangs and lunged at him while Zukvu stood on the side instructing, put your weight into your hips and legs and keep your eyes on the goblin's axe. The protagonist listened and tried to follow exactly what Zukvu said. The protagonist stares straight at the monster, determined to change his life. On a beautiful sunny day, another player glances toward the sound of clashing weapons. He grips his sword tight and swings at the goblin, but he misses. Oh no, he says with regret. Just then another player walks up and asks him, what's wrong? Sorry, I'm late. He doesn't seem to care much and says to the newcomer, you're finally here. Come here and watch this. The protagonist screams in frustration, ah, putting all his strength into a thrust. The sword gets stuck in the ground and he stands there panting. The other player sighs, damn, he's totally wiped out. Is he still trying to finish that goblin challenge that's been trending? Killing 100 goblins is going to be super hard, you know. The player who has been watching the protagonist's training for a while says dejectedly, I thought so at first too. The protagonist gasps for air as his status window pops up. He trembles, gritting his teeth in anger, remembering how he was invited to the tower at age 58. He punches the ground repeatedly, shouting, damn it! The other player watches from afar, jaw-dropped in shock, as he looks at the protagonist's status window. The protagonist clutches his head, unable to understand why he even has a special ability. The thing people call a privilege for the chosen ones, and yet even after 5 years it still takes him a whole hour to kill one goblin. He thinks helplessly, who would ever think there'd be a player like this, since I'm still level 1? A goblin is suddenly sliced in two by a sharp blade. The young man in the blue coat breathes a sigh of relief. A moment later, Kim Jigu gathers everyone together. He praises them, saying they did a great job. The group he guided also rushes to say, thanks for your hard work. He immediately checks to see if they have all leveled up. 3 of them smile and say they've reached a new level, even though they haven't killed many goblins yet. Kim Jigu explains that it's very easy to level up in the early stages, then turns to leave. He tells them to gather at the entrance tomorrow to move to the 2nd floor as they watch his back fade away. One person can't help it. He asks quietly about how famous Jigu is. Immediately, another confirms that Kim Jigu is indeed very famous. Meanwhile, the guy in the blue coat takes the opportunity to pick up the remaining crystal. Someone else asks curiously what Kim Jigu is famous for. The guy in the blue coat says there are a few rumors about him. First, that he's a transcendent, but they are skeptical. If he's a transcendent, why is he still doing guide work like this? The guy in the blue coat reveals that he is actually the player with the lowest ranking. The others look blank as they've never heard of a ranking for the lowest level players. The guy in the blue coat replies that there isn't one, but he glances at Jigu's silhouette in the distance and says everyone has secretly given him a nickname, the player who can't level up. Kim Jigu is currently leaning silently against a tree. To him, this place is his most frequented spot after finishing his guide work. It's a remote, desolate place he discovered after wandering the 1st floor countless times. Kim Jigu knows that here, only one goblin spawns every day. Sure enough, just a few steps away one appears. He carefully draws his weapon, thinking that if he pulls a sneak attack and hits its weak point, it will be easier to win. Thinking this, he sneaks closer behind it. Sweat pours down his back. Suddenly, the goblin rolls its eyes and spots him. It swings its spear violently toward his neck. Luckily, Kim Jigu manages to block it with his weapon just in time. The ambush plan falls apart and human and monster clash. They attack each other relentlessly. Kim Jigu struggles to hold his ground, silently lamenting, "Another rough battle today." By the time the sun is about to set, he heads back to the Player Management Association. He looks at the 20,000 won in his hand with a heavy heart, realizing that after deducting the cost of the mana potion, he's actually in the red. Kim Jigu turns a corner and is surprised to see Teo opening the door, so he greets him. Teo is also a bit surprised to run into him here. Kim Jigu asks him very warmly if working late is exhausting. Teo's expression shifts from regret to a cold, decisive sorry, and he walks away. Jigu finds it strange. He goes into the office to ask Otisid what's up with Teo. Otisid, who is his lead supervisor, bows his head and hesitatingly says that starting tomorrow, Teo will be in charge of the group Jigu guided today. Kim Jigu is stunned and asks why. Otisid can't even look him in the eye, avoiding his gaze and saying, "Everything was fine at first, but then that group heard the rumors about you." Hearing this, Kim Jigu falls silent. He feels a surge of bitterness and bites his lip, unable to hold back. He asks, "What does that have to do with guiding?" Otisid sighs wearily. "I can't help it because those rumors, they're true." Just then the TV news plays. It startles him. Someone is raving that Angela is preparing to conquer the 75th floor. The two instinctively look at the screen, listening to the two anchors talk. They are racing to confirm that Angela is indeed conquering the 75th floor and will hold a send-off ceremony at the Soul Gate tomorrow morning. Kim Jigu sighs. Everyone talks about players all day long, but they've never even been near the tower. Otisid purses his lips, admitting that it's because everyone idolizes players. Kim Jigu listens blankly as he continues talking about the gate. They could appear anywhere and anyone has the potential to become a player. He didn't answer the man, his eyes fixed on the news broadcast on the TV, his mind preoccupied with Otisid's words. He felt as though his future was shrouded in darkness. The sound from the TV still echoed in his ears. The anchors were reporting that a rank S gate had appeared in the United States. They were hoping for reinforcements from South Korea, and in return, the U.S. would offer a very generous reward. This immediately reminded everyone of Angela's declaration. Kim Jigu fell into deep thought. To him, climbing the tower felt like a distant dream. He couldn't help it. He just turned the TV off. Otisid, seeing this, asked why he turned it off while he was still watching. He replied indifferently that he just felt like it. Otis didn't pursue the matter any further. Handing him the payment envelope for the day, Otis reminded him with a polite tone that Teo was a good person and he shouldn't hate him too much. Kim Jigu smiled and said it wasn't Teo's fault. "He doesn't need to feel sorry for me," he said. Otisid nodded, satisfied, and reminded him to come early tomorrow to hand over the work. As he moved his mouse, he told him that while it wasn't enough to make up for everything, "There is someone who specifically requested you." Kim Jigu was surprised and asked for details. By the next morning, he had met that person. The guy introduced himself as Kim Seong-pyo and enthusiastically shook his hand. Kim Jigu happily introduced himself as the guide, but Kim Seong-pyo mentioned he had already heard a lot about him from Zukvu. He looked a bit bewildered, not immediately recalling that name. After that, he asked what his relationship was with Zukvu. Kim Seong-pyo honestly replied that he was his cousin. Recalling his brief memories of the guy, his lips curled into a smile and he whispered a silent thank you. He told the guy to quickly introduce the members of the party. Kim Seong-pyo gestured from left to right, Jun Javon Jun Sung-woo, and Kim Han-yoon. All three greeted him cheerfully. Kim Jigu began to outline the requirements, hoping they would complete the guided portion in 5 days. Then he enthusiastically showed them the way. He said he would explain things as they walked. From dawn until dusk, he finally gave the order to set up camp to rest. He sat down and started the gas stove. Kim Han-yoon walked over and asked if he needed any help. He quickly told her that if the camp was set up, she should just get some rest. So he just sat there. After cooking a fragrant pot of food for the group, they couldn't help but praise him for being such a great cook. Suddenly, Jun Javon asked if it was true that his rank never increased. Kim Seong-pyo immediately scolded him, but Kim Jigu calmly replied that it was true, telling them that if they had questions, they could just ask him directly. The boy shyly apologized. Kim Seong-pyo warned him to be careful. As he served the food, he asked them how the hunt went today. Kim Han-yoon remarked that it wasn't as difficult as she had thought. Jun Sung-woo, while enjoying the meal, said he only got slightly injured. Kim Jigu reminded them to keep it up. The first floor only has crude weapons, and their movements are easy to predict. He encouraged them not to lose their guard, saying that with hard work, they would improve quickly. Looking at the boiling pot of food, he warned them not to run into a guardian. Seeing their confusion, he explained that every floor has a guardian one capable of wiping out an entire large team. Their strength is on par with a gatekeeper. He added that while you can gain a lot of experience from them outside of the ones on the lower floors, even high-ranking players don't dare to hunt them alone. Kim Seong-pyo and Kim Han-yoon were stunned by this. Seeing their reaction, he comforted them, saying he tracked their spawn times and that there were guilds specifically dedicated to hunting guardians. So there's no need to be afraid. Deep on the fourth floor in the border region between the forest and the desert, a goblin was fleeing in terror when it tripped over a stone and fell flat on the ground. A dark shadow slowly approached, leaving the goblin trembling, not knowing what to do. Moments later, it was torn to shreds under the moonlight. The shadow gradually revealed itself to be a ferocious guardian. On the second day of the guidance on the second floor of the tower, a horde of orcs intercepted Kim Jigu's group. But to Kim Seong-pyo, they weren't that hard to take down. By the third day on the third floor, the group encountered a pack of orcs and goblins, but Kim Seong-pyo remarked how stupid they were and how Kim Jigu only needed a single stone to make them fight each other. Kim Seong-pyo clearly understood that the reason his group was leveling up so fast was because Kim Jigu showed them the easiest routes. No wonder Zukvu recommended him. At that moment, Kim Jigu was looking at him puzzled. He asked what he was doing. Kim Seong-pyo said he was writing a diary, something he'd been doing since the first day he got the invitation. He hoped to publish an autobiography if he ever became a high-ranking player. Kim Seong-pyo happily told his friends that they only needed to get through tomorrow to reach the Floor 5 qualification test. Kim Han-yoon took out a towel to wipe her face, excited to see what rank she would get. Jun Sung-woo, while brushing his teeth, joined in showing his curiosity, and the group broke into laughter. Only Kim Jigu sat quietly warming his hands by the fire, his expression deep in thought. Then he looked up at the high sky. The moon was shining bright tonight. He muttered to himself, expressing his desire to reach the fifth floor. The next morning, Kim Jigu steeled himself and told the group about the fourth floor. The orcs and goblins there would be more numerous and faster, but basically the same as on the third floor. Kim Seong-pyo was swinging his sword hard, fighting a large goblin head-on. Kim Han-yoon was also seriously engaged in battle with another goblin. Jun Sung-woo kept his eyes shut tight, but the sword in his hand still sliced the head off a nearby monster. Jun Jevin wasn't slacking either, cutting down another one. Kim Jigu quietly observed from the side, then suddenly he realized something. He shielded his eyes to get a better look at his surroundings, shocked to see a cloud of dust approaching. But today wasn't supposed to be the day the Guardian spawned. He gripped his sword tightly, knowing this was definitely not a good sign, and shouted for everyone to leave immediately before turning to run himself. He grabbed their backpacks because, based on the experience he had gained, after all his years as a guide, guiding in the real world was completely different from the game. He thought to himself while quickly putting on all the gear. Just then, Jun Javan suddenly cried out in pain due to a leg injury. A goblin was rapidly closing in on him. Seeing this, Kim Seong-pyo screamed his name. With one clean swing, he severed the goblin's head, saving Jun Jevin just in time. Kim Jigu watched it all unfold, sighing at how one split second of carelessness could lead to the whole team being wiped out. Jun Javan was shaking with fear, and nearby Kim Han-hyun had lost his composure, getting struck by a goblin. Watching this, he cursed, "Damn it!" Worried, he glanced at the dust cloud in the distance. As it closed in on them, he let out a silent groan. From the smoke, a guardian emerged, confirming his worst fears were coming true. Behind it, countless other goblins followed. Kim Jigu panicked at the sight of the guardian. With a frustrated click of his tongue, he grabbed a smoke bomb and shouted to everyone, "Run, move now!" With those words, he hurled the smoke bomb. It flew over the group and detonated, obscuring the goblin's vision. He urgently commanded everyone to run faster. Kim Seo-eun asked doubtfully, "Where are we even running to?" He just told her, "Just follow me," because he knew a place to hide. Moments later, the group reached a cave entrance. They all stumbled inside, panting and helping each other. Kim Seo-eun, carrying Jun Javan on her back, gasped, "What? What was that thing? He guessed it was a fourth-floor guardian, and he had no idea why it had shown up here. He set the backpacks down silently, thankful he'd brought enough supplies. Suddenly, Jun Sung-Vu frantically called him over to check on Kim Han-hyun. He saw the girl's face was flushed bright red, and her breathing was labored. He figured she must have been poisoned by a goblin. Kim Jigu tried to reassure him, saying she'd be fine once she took some painkillers, but then he froze. He frantically searched his bag, but the bottle was gone. It turned out that in the chaos of running, his bag hadn't been zipped properly and the bottles had fallen out. He cursed himself for such a stupid mistake. Then, trying to steady his nerves, he knew he couldn't afford to panic right now. He spoke up, telling them he was going back out to call for help. All three tried to stop him. It was too dangerous outside. Kim Jigu tried to calm them down. He told them he'd been through the tutorial phase countless times. He was just going out to fire a signal flare. He didn't tell them he was the most experienced person in the world at level 1. With that, he carefully stepped outside and hid behind a rock, watching the goblins. He told himself it was hard to predict their movements since they were being directed by the Guardian. He stood there, torn between giving up and turning back. The sky was growing dark. Kim Jigu crept up the side of the cliff, planning to shoot the flare quickly and head back to the cave. He moved with caution, thinking that as long as he avoided the Guardian, he'd be fine. But out of nowhere, the Guardian appeared right behind him. Kim Jigu finally sensed the danger, but the goblin was already swinging its blade down at him. Terrified, he could only gasp. He didn't have time to dodge and was sent flying, crashing hard into the cliff face. His body couldn't handle the impact and he coughed up blood. The smoke bomb he was carrying fell and exploded, blocking the Guardian's line of sight. Kim Jigu struggled to pull himself away. He gritted his teeth, looking back at the creature's bloodthirsty expression, and could only groan in frustration. He grabbed his handgun, telling himself he had to get out of there fast. He raised the gun to the sky, knowing the Guardian wouldn't fall for the same trick twice. After firing the flare, he scrambled to put some distance between them. Kim Jigu pushed himself to his limit, desperate for any help. Suddenly, he saw an exit, the 5th-floor evaluation gate. He'd once thought about braving it, but the image of his mother and sister held him back. He found himself standing near the gate, helplessly thinking, "Why is a level 1 player like me running here?" He leaned his head against the gate and wept, knowing that even a level 4 player struggled with the evaluation. He knew he was walking straight to his death. Behind him, the Guardian was barreling toward him. Kim Jigu gritted his teeth and pushed against the door. He knew he still had a choice to make, so he committed and threw the door wide open. Wanting to see what was on the other side, he felt a light flash from behind the door, and a strange sound rang out announcing that he had arrived at the first evaluation round. After verifying the player, the voice confirmed he had met the requirements to enter. The system notification chimed, signaling that Kim Jigu had begun the first evaluation. Then it manifested a goat and told him the requirement for the evaluation was to kill it. Kim Jigu panted at a complete loss. He looked at the white goat in front of him and couldn't help but curse. He lunged forward and drove his sword into the goat's neck. It let out a painful cry. Then the system announced he had completed the test. The goat's neck was bleeding, and the system repeated the announcement over and over. He had passed with excellence and received a reward. Kim Jigu was stunned. He had been sure he was a dead man. He watched as the goat's body began to fade away, still unable to believe it was really that simple. Suddenly, he sensed something. A second later, countless black threads lunged at him, engulfing his body. He watched them close in bewildered, not knowing what they were until he was completely wrapped up. It felt like his body was falling into a bottomless pit. A strange voice echoed in his ear, asking him who he was. He suddenly opened his eyes and saw his body floating. He drifted in an endless void, looking around but having no clue where he was. The voice spoke again, asking if he was its master. Surprised, he realized it sounded like a young boy, but he was still skeptical about the word master. The voice sounded angry, exclaiming that it couldn't believe its master couldn't answer such a simple question. That made him snap back in anger. The voice sighed and told him to give it a name. Kim Jigu was still shaken and asked, "Give it a name." It told him it wanted to link with him. The system voice rang out, confirming what it said and asking if he wanted to agree to the link. After that, it demanded he name the ego, and as he thought about it, the image of his younger sister appeared before him, and Otisit and the others also looked over at him, then rushed to his side in an instant. It turned out Kim Jigu had been lying in a hospital bed. Seeing him wake up, they panicked and called a nurse to check on him. Only then did Kim Jigu realize that 2 weeks had passed since he lost consciousness on the 5th floor. Otisid quickly filled him in on everything, saying they were lucky that a party of players had spotted the Guardian and surrounded it at the 5th floor gate, though it still managed to escape. He was still a bit worried about the Guardian, but after seeing Kim Seong-poo's group come to visit, he felt relieved, and a smile returned to his face. A while later, his mother called him. He kept saying yes, to put her mind at ease, listening gently and patiently as she talked, all while dragging his IV pole along. He comforted her, telling her there was no need to apologize, laughing heartily, as he said he was all grown up now. He hoped she could rest easy, adding that the insurance company had already covered his hospital bills. He promised to take care of his health to keep her worry-free. He walked up to the large window, told his sister not to come visit him, then hung up and fell into a daze. Looking at the scenery below, he sighed that even though he had cleared the 5th floor, it wasn't what he expected. He gripped his phone tight, realizing that after all that, he was still just a level 1. Kim Jigu tried to calm down and relaxed his hand, and something gradually appeared on his finger. When it fully materialized, it was a strange ring. Even though his level didn't increase, he headed into the management building without hesitation. Inside the tower, people were still training diligently. As soon as he stepped through the gate, they couldn't help but glance over, seeing Kim Jigu appear with his signature black backpack. One person couldn't hold back. He asked if he was really that famous. Another quickly confirmed it, but Kim Jigu treated it like thin air and walked straight past. Seeing him walk away, someone asked why he was so famous. The guy next to him reminded him of the rumors surrounding him, the rumor that he couldn't level up, but in reality, at that very moment, Kim Jigu was heading to a higher floor all by himself. Just then a young man stepped up and said that rumor was old news. He smirked and asked if they didn't know he had already earned a different title. They all looked suspicious. On Kim Jigu's side, a pack of bloodthirsty goblins was eyeing him. The young man told them Kim Jigu was now a bloodthirsty guide. He stood alone facing the charging goblin pack. He just smirked as the ring on his finger flashed with red light. The next second, a sword appeared in his hand, radiating a fierce red energy that made Kim Jigu even more confident. In a flash, he vanished from his spot. The goblins could only feel a gust of wind sweep past before the whole pack was massacred. Kim Jigu lunged at another group, leaped high into the air, and slammed his sword into the ground. It made the goblins drop like flies. The strange voice from the 5th floor was still hounding him, constantly urging him to give it a name. With the final strike that wiped out the pack, he blurted out the name Du. The sword in his hand vibrated slightly. He repeated its name, Du, and suddenly his status board was engulfed in a red glow. Kim Jigu didn't care. He kept right on massacring the remaining goblins. New text appeared on his status board showing that he had become a partner to the ego and could use its skills. Currently, Du's level was 7, strength was 18, and both stamina and magic power were 7. Its unique skill was transform into accessory, but just a second later its level increased to 8. Kim Jigu looked into his backpack filled with glittering purple crystals and couldn't help but marvel. Just a few days ago he was trembling in fear before a single monster. Now he was casually picking up piles of crystals like this. His gaze rested on the snake-shaped ring on his finger, and he asked, "Do am I right?" It flashed red immediately, as if responding to him, flashing back to a month ago when Jigu was in the forest checking his player info. He had been drawn to a skill classification called Ego Partner. He was overjoyed. It wasn't a dream, and he felt truly glad he had come to the tower. Right after getting discharged thinking about this, he broke into a cold sweat, remembering something about going home. He was definitely going to get scolded by Dujung for sure. She would definitely put on her demon face and grill him about where he had gone when he had only just left the hospital bed. Even though he knew it, he had to act because he had made up his mind. He couldn't just sit still when his status window had finally changed. After 5 years of waiting, he started pondering how to link with this thing called an ego. Minutes ticked by and a thought flashed in his mind. He hurriedly waved his hands. His foot scraped across the grass, his eyes widened, then he covered one eye with one hand and held the other out into the air. With an intense aura, he shouted his command to Link! And then the silence around him was eerie. Only Kim Jigu stood there, stuck in that awkward pose. Not far away, a bird perched on a tree looked at him like he was a total moron, then seemed put off by being in the same place as this weirdo. It flapped its wings and flew away. As for him, he could only play it cool, acting as if he'd accidentally forgotten something. I'll tie my shoelaces, saving myself from this awkward mess. I scratch my head, feeling like a total delusional idiot. And I'm secretly thankful no one's around. My expression turns sour as I name this insolent voice, Du. But I have no idea how the hell to actually use this thing. Just then a streak of a red light flashes, followed by a blue orb appearing out of thin air. The system abruptly informs me. Ego Du has been summoned. I'm too stunned to react, just staring in shock as the system explains that Du doesn't have a fixed form yet. Since the player lacks proficiency, Du's form will be randomized. Hearing that, I'm thrilled. I actually did it. But then the system adds that to form a physical body, it will randomly absorb matter from the surroundings. I look confused, wondering what that's supposed to mean. Suddenly, gusts of wind start swirling around me. In an instant, the wind turns violent, lifting me right off the ground. All this is because that blue orb is causing chaos. It lifts me high into the air, making me scream. Then it snatches my backpack. Are you kidding me? Even the cheapest items in there are worth 5,001. A poor guy like me has to hold on to that bag for dear life. As I struggle, I hear a ripping sound. My clothes are shredding, rapidly ripped into tiny pieces before being sucked up by that blue orb as the wind howls around us. If I let this continue, I won't even have my underwear left. I panic and beg it to stop. When it doesn't, I scream at the top of my lungs to let me go. Finally, everything settles down. The blue orb has turned multicolored, surrounded by a crimson glow. I lie on the ground, dazed, wondering if it's over. But then the orb shakes violently, followed by a deafening boom. A massive beam of red light shoots straight into the sky, lighting up the whole corner of the forest. The terrifying pressure scares the birds, sending them flying off in a panic. They're in such a rush they lose a few feathers without even noticing. The light fades away. Jigu slowly opens his eyes to look, then his eyes suddenly widen, because he sees a purple-black sword floating in the air with a bizarre red eye on the hilt staring straight at him. A while later, I find a piece of torn blanket and wrap it around myself. Finally, I understand everything. I confirm with the sword. So you're Du. It looks annoyed that I keep making it repeat itself. It even insolently calls me an idiot, but I choose to bite my tongue and not stoop to its level. Then I get to the point I want to know what an ego actually is. I guess it's like a soul, but Du immediately refutes that. I hold the sword, examining it closely while waiting for a real answer. However, it doesn't know what an ego is either. It gets annoyed that I keep touching its body and calls me a pervert in the most provocative tone imaginable. I'm beyond furious, but I close my eyes and try to stay patient. I'm suddenly curious if Du can move on its own. Truth be told, it's not sure about that either, so it says vaguely not right now, but probably later. I think for a moment, then wonder if it can unlink and change owners. Only the owner has that right, it says. The ego cannot. I get interested and ask the next question. I'm curious if it could attack me once it can move on its own. Yes, I could. However, if the owner logs out, the linked ego vanishes too, so practically speaking, it's pretty impossible. Hearing that, Jigu flashes a mysterious smile. I ask, Du the final question. Can it feel pain? It bluntly admits it can, because it's a great ego. Not just emotions, as long as I set it up, it has all the senses. Then it suspiciously asks, why? By now, I'm quietly squeezing a rock in my hand. The system suddenly pops up asking if I want to enable pain sensation for Du. I raise my hand with the rock and smash it straight into the sword to teach it some manners and stop its mouthy attitude. It lets out a miserable shriek. The sound echoes through the sky. What happens next is, I keep wiping out monsters while Du absorbs their blood, gaining experience and leveling up. Its stats keep climbing. End of flashback. I let out a sigh and tease it about how mouthy it used to be back then. I look at the ring on my hand and sternly ask, you remember right? It laughs nervously, implying it's embarrassed by that past. Every time I think about it, my blood boils. I glare at it, radiating killing intent, and ask what it said. It immediately shrinks back and lies, saying its blood is boiling with happiness. It's just so happy. Because I have such an amazing owner. I finally decide to let it slide. I notice my bag is full too. So that's enough for today. As I pack up to head back, Du mentions it's been a long time since it's been outside and it's getting restless. So I decide that next time, instead of the tower, I'll enter a gate to satisfy it. Otis, after hearing my plan, tells me not to enter any gates for now. I'm curious to know why. He claims that 4 high-level awakeners recently perished inside a gate in the United States. Furthermore, many unusual gates have been appearing lately, like a gate that was supposed to be F rank, but turned out to be C rank, or gates with strange distorted structures. This hasn't happened in 23 years, but it's been occurring frequently in just the last month. That's why he's a bit worried. Jigu silently calculates that a month ago was when he first met Du, and he wonders if the two are related. But he quickly dismisses the thought, feeling it must just be a coincidence. Seeing him silent, Tesla explains that he isn't saying he should never enter a gate again. He just wants him to stay safe during these chaotic times. He knows Jigu is excited to finally use his abilities, but he hopes he'll be patient. Understanding the good intentions, Jigu offers his thanks. Tesla is glad he understands, and the two bid each other farewell right as he's about to leave. Tesla suddenly teases him about being a bloodthirsty guide, which makes Jigu jump in annoyance before he quickly leaves the building. As he walks, he contemplates pure crystals, rare quest rewards, and how gates are clearly more profitable than the tower. Thinking of this, he suddenly reaches into his pocket and takes out his phone, even though Tesla advised him not to go. But that's life, you have to hustle. Since he's got a mountain of debt to pay off and these unusual gates are rare, he figures it'll probably be fine. Just then, he happens upon a recruitment post for a team entering an F-rank gate in Guji City. Without a second thought, he hits the call button. The screen displays calling for a few seconds, and very quickly someone picks up. At a crowded coffee shop, Kim Jigu and a young man in a white dress shirt shake hands. He introduces himself as the team leader Ha Song-soo. Jigu quickly introduces himself as the one who called earlier. The man suddenly asks, "Is this your first time hunting in a gate?" He nods in admission, then adds that he has already studied the strategies for team combat. Song-soo nods satisfied with that answer. He takes out a contract and hands it to him, which mentions things like profit-sharing, breach of contract penalties, and so on. Overall, they are standard terms, and equipment is to be divided by rolling dice. While Jigu is reading the contract, the man tells him to meet at the station at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon and warns him not to be late. He explains that gates come in two main types: one-time gates that disappear once the mission is finished, and permanent gates that don't disappear, allowing for periodic hunting. Even though permanent gates offer fewer rewards than the one-time type, they are less risky since the layout inside is well known. Because of this, there are many people coming and going. At this moment, Jigu has arrived to gather with the others at the gate. Someone suggests that if everyone has finished checking their gear, it's time to go. And so, they walk into the tunnel one by one. Jigu's team has 5 members in total, but everyone is keeping a wide distance from each other. He glances around. It seems they aren't very close. He wonders if they all just joined through that recruitment ad. However, Song-soo and the girl walking beside him seem to know each other as he notices them chatting the entire way. Suddenly, something catches Song-soo's attention. He abruptly tells everyone to stop, causing them all to turn back, startled. Right at that moment, in the pitch-black tunnel ahead, a series of indistinct noises echoes. Song-soo reaches for an arrow and warns them that they're coming. No sooner than he finishes speaking, a swarm of zombies rushes out from the darkness. Their eyes are blood-red and terrifying, and they don't stop letting out ghastly wails. Song-soo immediately stiffens and orders everyone to defend. He then draws his bow and fires at them. A blonde guy on the team reacts quickly, too. He lunges forward with his shield and successfully blocks the attack of a zombie rushing at them. The remaining members hurriedly launch their own attacks. Time to beat the crap out of them. Song-soo draws his bow again. The arrowhead is instantly covered in a cold blue glow, and it quickly flies straight into the center of a zombie's forehead. At the same time, a young man in white lunges forward with his sword and slashes hard at another zombie, causing it to howl in pain. As if that wasn't enough. He clicks his tongue and without hesitation delivers a powerful kick. He continues swinging his sword, clearly frustrated as he wonders why these things are so tough when they're just rotting piles of flesh. Suddenly, a black shadow zips past him. Remarkably, wherever that shadow passes, the zombies are immediately struck down by the person's sword. They collapse like straw, falling to both sides. That person uses an overwhelming aura to successfully carve out a path to the other side. The blonde guy and the man in white who were struggling against the other zombies have to pause their fighting to stare with their mouths wide open. Even Song-soo and the other girl in the group are shocked. The battle finally comes to an end. The whole group sits down to rest. The blonde guy sits next to Jigu and exclaims that thanks to him, they managed to handle that bunch so quickly and cleanly. The man in white also smiles and chimes in saying he really carried them. Hearing that, he broke into a cold sweat and quickly acted like it was just a lucky shot. But the blonde guy insisted he was just being humble, pointing out that he played the most crucial role in taking down the mid-level boss and suggested that once they were done, he should invite him to his party for future hunts. He just gave a polite, awkward smile, but inside he couldn't help but think, thank goodness Song-soo doesn't seem to mind. Usually saying something like that right in front of the team leader would be pretty rude. He couldn't help but watch Song-soo and that girl for a moment, but they didn't seem to pay any attention to this conversation. The other two were still busy buttering them up, claiming everything went smoothly today was all thanks to him. Outwardly, he acted shy and told them they were overpraising him. But deep down, he felt pretty good because honestly, they weren't wrong. At this point, Song-soo felt they had rested enough, so he called everyone to keep moving. Hearing that, he gripped his sword tightly and asked Du if he was ready. But Du didn't give a straight answer, just complaining about how disgusting the zombie blood was. There was no way around it. They were already at the boss's lair, so he had to suck it up for a little while. In the corner, the blonde guy signaled for the guy in the white shirt to come closer. He then whispered something into the guy's ear while glaring at Jigu. Then they both shared a mysterious, knowing smile. A while later, they reached the end of the tunnel. In front of them stood a massive iron gate. This was the lair of the boss they were looking for, and these huge iron bars seemed to be there to guard the boss. Without any further delay, Song-soo started to explain the strategy for defeating the gatekeeper Talon. He explained it was a giant ghoul, but a rude voice cut him off, telling him to save it. The blonde guy wagged his finger, acting as if they had already done their research before even setting foot through this permanent gate. So he said not to waste time and just jump into the fight. But Song-soo's point of view was that even if he already knew, he still had to listen, because inside these gates, just one person's mistake could put the whole team in danger. The guy clicked his tongue, annoyed. The girl who had been following Song-soo and staying quiet until now finally lost her patience. She glared at him with a darkened face. Seeing this, Song-soo glared back at her. She started startled by his dark expression and quickly reined in her emotions, deciding to keep quiet again. Song-soo acted like nothing had happened and explained everything from the beginning. Jigu stared at him, feeling that he was really strange just now. A moment later, after they melted the iron bars and stepped inside, they immediately saw Talon sitting with its back to them. Seeing its massive muscular frame, someone blurted out that it was much bigger than they had imagined. Another person, immediately annoyed, signaled for him to keep it down, and then the team began to act on the plan they had laid out earlier. First, Song-soo attacked it with an explosive arrow. He pulled the bowstring taut, and once he aimed at his target, he let go. The arrow carried incredible power. It whistled through the air, heading straight for Talon. Just as they predicted, this infuriated it, and it swung its fist toward them. At that moment, the blonde guy, also known as Song Byung-hoon, took his position as the tank and shouted out. He braced himself, tensing up to block Talon's attack. In a flash, it was right in front of him, and it drove its fist straight into Byung-hoon's shield. The terrifying impact kicked up a cloud of dust. Shards from the shield flew everywhere. This one blow from Talon was more than he could handle. He was sent flying back, miserably crashing several meters away. And in that very instant, because Jigu and the guy in the white shirt were the main damage dealers, they immediately seized the opportunity to rush in and deal as much damage as possible. The two coordinated with each other, stabbing left and right, continuously raining attacks down on it. It roared in its own language, filled with rage, its eyes turning a terrifying shade of red. The most critical moment had arrived. It suddenly curled up to transform. In its new form, its durability tripled. Normal attacks would be useless now. Someone immediately shouted for Jigu to attack it. They had discussed this beforehand and were confident that with his abilities he could still deal some damage. Jigu quickly unleashed his power. A dark, eerie-looking smoke suddenly appeared. He gained momentum, launched himself into the air, and gripped his sword with both hands, swinging it down firmly and decisively. As he hung in midair, aimed straight at Talon, the mechanical sound of the system rang out, announcing that his synchronization rate with Du had increased. He realized he could use Du's power more effectively, which stunned him, but he quickly pushed it aside and poured all his strength into a single strike against Talon. This attack was incredibly powerful, accompanied by flickering electric sparks that made people shudder. Suddenly, the system popped up a notification. He had defeated the gatekeeper Talon. Witnessing the scene, Byung-hoon and the guy in the white shirt froze once again, their eyes wide open as they stared at him. Even Song-soo and the girl with him seemed completely horrified. The system rang frantically, announcing he had gained experience. He had defeated the gatekeeper in one hit, and he had received more experience. It kept repeating like that several times, but the thing that surprised him the most was, the system said Talon's blood had boosted his ability slightly. He had obtained the cannibalism skill, and the function of the cannibalism skill was, the player can recover vitality by consuming corpses. Looking at Talon collapsing to the ground, someone in the team cursed out loud. He thought this whole thing was insane. Another person cheered and yelled Jigu's name. Byung-hun excitedly gripped his shoulder and asked for his contact information. The guy in the white shirt also had this in mind, so he hurriedly ran over to join in. He could only awkwardly decline, saying they should talk about it later. Right now. Suddenly, Song-soo spoke up to grab their attention, holding a dagger in his hand and saying, "It was a paralysis dagger dropped by this boss." The guy in white immediately exclaimed that not only did they take it down in one shot, but it even dropped loot, and Song-soo planned to roll dice to decide who would get it, just as mentioned in the previous agreement. On this side, Ung-hoon suddenly put his arm around Jigu's shoulder and whispered in a twisted tone, asking if he didn't think that dagger should belong to him. Hearing that, Jigu just gave him a cold glance, feeling annoyed inwardly since the guy hadn't been using honorifics with him from the start. Ung-hoon continued playing the provocateur, emphasizing that it was all Jigu's hard work, and even suggested that if Jigu just went along with it, then he and Gio, that would be the guy in the white shirt, would put pressure on Song-soo according to their calculations, so if they did that, Jigu would definitely get a share. It was a win-win for both sides. However, how could such cheap tricks get past him? Thanks to his 5 years of experience as a guide, he was quite good at reading people. From the beginning, he had been suspicious of the two main damage dealers, Gio and Ung-hoon. This Ung-hoon, he just didn't expect them to have this kind of plot. On the other side, the remaining group consisted of the team leader Ha Song-soo and that mysterious woman. Although he couldn't tell what those two were thinking, he was certain they were hiding something. At this point, the whole group sat in a circle. Song-soo suggested that if everyone was ready, he would start rolling the dice, and then he reached into his pocket to pull them out. Gio and Ung-hoon immediately exchanged glances and nodded in understanding, and suddenly Ung-hoon moved his body ready to strike. In the blink of an eye, his seat was empty. He quickly whipped out a sword, then holding the sword in one hand and a shield in the other, he rushed toward Song-soo. By now, the tip of his sword was already inches away from him, but Song-soo still sat there calmly. Without even flinching, and at the critical moment, Jigu suddenly lunged forward, grabbing Ung-hoon's sword-wielding hand. His sudden appearance caught him by surprise. Before he could react, he felt the world turn upside down, as his body traced a parabola through the air. He was easily slammed to the ground by Jigu and couldn't help but cry out in pain. Jigu pressed his face hard into the dirt. Ung-hoon gritted his teeth looking at Jigu, having previously thought they were on the same side. But Jigu didn't care about him. He was still thinking about the previous moment. If he had made just one wrong move, he could have been wiped out for good. Ung-hoon tried to struggle but failed. He hurriedly screamed for Gio to help, but Gio was trembling uncontrollably in fear, his mouth stammering and unable to say a single clear word, let alone helping him. Seeing his useless teammate like that, Ung-hoon quickly lied, saying he was just joking, just trying to pull a little prank. However, Jigu was still lost in his own thoughts. That moment was truly terrifying. If things had gone wrong, the one meeting their maker wouldn't have been the team leader, but this jerk Ung-hoon. He squinted at the girl next to Song-soo. Her whole body was now shrouded in killing intent. She gripped her knife tightly, and her left eye flickered with an eerily sinister red light. Her movements were so fast he hadn't even seen her draw the knife. He panicked, thinking, "Isn't she a mage?" and felt that she was truly dangerous. He then looked at Song-soo standing next to her and secretly felt he was the same. Clearly, just a moment ago, when the blade was pointed at his throat, he didn't even blink, instead staring straight at the knife. It was truly too strange, so he couldn't help but want to know who they were. Coincidentally, Ha Song-soo also wanted to ask him the same question. Jigu chose to bypass the topic. Then he asked how he intended to handle these two guys. Hearing that, Gio hurriedly threw away his pride and knelt down to beg, saying he only did what Ung-hoon said because Ung-hoon promised him money. He even swore he didn't know about Ung-hoon's plan to stab Song-soo, but Song-soo ignored him. He was only curious why Jigu asked him that, and Jigu replied as if it were obvious because he was the one they were targeting. Hearing that, he pondered for a moment, then suddenly called out to Hajime, who was that mysterious girl. She nodded in understanding, then killing intent suddenly covered her body, and she moved into a strange stance. To shift her footing, Jigu immediately widened his eyes in shock. In a flash, she had glided past him, appearing beside Gio without a sound. Her left eye flashed red again, her face becoming chillingly gloomy, and then she struck his neck with lightning speed. Gio only had time to let out a short scream. Then he collapsed powerlessly to the ground, watching this scene. Jigu couldn't help but exclaim that she was truly a dangerous woman. Then he suddenly glanced down, a thought of copying Hajime's technique suddenly sparking in his mind. Ben delivered a clean, single-handed strike to Ung-hoon's throat, and the guy started choking so hard he was spitting everywhere. Then as Ben stood up straight, Ung-hoon immediately collapsed to the ground. Since he had already kicked the bucket, Jigu looked down at his own hand in surprise, honestly amazed that he could actually pull that off. But he quickly snapped back to reality and told Song-Soo that he was taking the knife. Song-Soo immediately demanded to know why. Ben's reason was simple: since he saved his life, he deserved it. But Song-Soo still thought that was a bit much. Ben just calmly replied that an item of this caliber was nothing for a pro like him. Hearing that, Song-Soo fell silent. Jigu wasn't sure what he was thinking, but a moment later Song-Soo hesitated and asked if he knew who he was. Jigu guessed that anyone with a bodyguard like Ha-Jim clearly wasn't some small-time nobody. However, he made it clear he had zero interest in them and no intention of digging into their business, but in exchange he was handing Ung-hoon and the loot over for them to deal with. Because he still wanted to go, hunting for a little while longer before heading out. As he said this, he looked incredibly smug. Song-Soo and Ha-Jim were left speechless. A while later, Du finally got some alone time with Jigu and chimed in to warn him. That woman Ha-Jim is extremely dangerous. Jigu knew that, of course. That's exactly why he only talked to them. If he had just run away, it would have looked even more suspicious. Hearing that, Du immediately jumped down his throat, saying, "You call that talking? There's no such thing as a conversation where you know they're dangerous, yet you still leave the cleanup to them and even swipe their loot," Jigu retorted clearly. He got that item because he saved his life, and the same went for them. Now they could stay and keep hunting. Suddenly, the system announced he had absorbed the blood of a zombie, and the sword in his hand greedily sucked the last of the black energy into its core. Seeing this, he asked Du with concern if it was feeling more energized yet, or was it still hungry? Du immediately complained painfully, reminding him that it was an ego, and zombie blood tasted like absolute trash, making it want to collapse. Seeing how disgusted it was, he didn't push it. He glanced at the ring radiating powerful energy on his hand and decided to keep hunting. After all, there were no zombies left, and he figured it had drank enough blood anyway. Since Du had absorbed blood to boost its energy stats, it now had agility from the ghost, strength from the brain, and stamina from the zombie, meaning its stats were way higher than its current level. At this point, Jigu decided to stop by the rewards room before leaving. The rewards room was a gray zone where players could teleport by using the gatekeeper's corpse. So looking at Talon's gray, lifeless body ahead, he walked closer. Just like its name suggested, it was where you collected rewards. He reached out to touch it, but his hand suddenly stopped and he looked at the ring on his finger. He called out to Du, who immediately asked, "What is it?" Jigu then posed a question. Was that stuff here before? He meant the shimmering lines of light running across the walls. When Du said no, Jigu fell into deep thought. He walked up to the wall and tapped it. Tap, tap. The wall let out a strange hollow sound. It seemed hollow inside. He stepped back, summoned his sword, and asked Du if he should smash it open. Du immediately said yes, decisively. Hearing that, Jigu grew even more certain. He gathered his strength, gripped his sword, and swung hard. But right at that moment, Du seemed to sense something. It shouted for him to stop, but it was already too late. The stone wall in front of him shattered, scattering debris everywhere. It quickly collapsed, creating a large hole and kicking up a cloud of thick dust. Jigu waved his hands to clear the air. Only then did he have a chance to ask what Du was trying to say earlier. It spoke vaguely about egos, leaving Jigu confused, so it had to explain more clearly. It seemed to sense another ego. Jigu was stunned. He stared into the murky space ahead where something seemed to be hidden behind layers of dust. He couldn't help but be skeptical. Could an ego really be in a place like this? Just then, in the middle of the thick dust, something suddenly bloomed with a blinding white light. Jigu's eyes were glued to the hole in the wall. Even now, he couldn't believe it. How could there be so many egos here? If that were the case, what had he been struggling for over the last 5 years? Du immediately snarked that it was because he was an idiot. Jigu snapped at it, asking what it said. Realizing it had gone too far, Du didn't dare repeat it and just told him to go find that ego. It was around here somewhere. Another cloud of dust rose up. He wasn't prepared and coughed twice. Once the dust settled, he looked puzzled. This gate had been harvested by the city. A long time ago. There's no way it was hiding any more secrets, but Du insisted it could feel another ego. At that moment, his attention was drawn to something as the dust cleared. What hit his eyes was a white sword embedded in a stone pedestal. He walked closer. No matter how he looked at it, it looked just like a holy sword. Looking at the energy flowing around the blade, he hesitated. It was fine to just grab it, right? Since Du didn't say anything, he stopped overthinking it. He reached out with both hands to grab the hilt. The gem embedded in the handle suddenly lit up. In the blink of an eye, it shone so brightly it lit up the entire space with a blinding glare. A voice echoes out of the void, waking Jigu up. It asks if he is its master. He slowly opens his eyes, feeling confused and wondering where he is. He holds out his hands and sees nothing but a blinding white light, just like when he met Du, but the feeling is different. He asks the voice if it is the ego inside the white sword. Yes. It admits immediately, saying it has been waiting for its master for a very long time. It is impatient to hear his answer. He tells it he isn't its master yet, but he wants to become one. It falls silent, as if pondering his words. A moment later, it suggests he give it a name. He calls it EO, and from now on, that is its name. A bright white light flashes, blinding him, and Jigu is suddenly transported back to the dungeon. At first, he looks at the white sword in his hand, feeling strangely calm. Maybe it's because this is the second time. So he's getting quite used to this. While lost in thought, he suddenly hears a thunderous crashing sound. He doesn't know when the cracks appeared in the dungeon, but they are spreading rapidly. It could collapse at any moment. Several parts of the wall are already buckling under the pressure and crumbling. Du urges him to run, and even EO tells him to get out of there. He brushes them off and runs, clutching his head. Suddenly, he hears a strange noise. Du curiously asks who EO is. EO doesn't answer, but instead asks, "What about me?" It starts singing arrogantly about being a great ego. Jigu is in a dangerous situation and doesn't want to hear it blathering, so fuming, he tells them both to be quiet. Then he spots the Talon's carcass. He remembers he needs to teleport to the reward room quickly, but just then the ground beneath him shakes. His heart skips a beat as he looks down at the ground, which is cracking open. Terrified, he lets out a curse. He lunges desperately toward the Talon's body. As soon as his hand touches it, the system asks if he wants to teleport to the reward room. He can't wait a second longer and tells it to hurry up. A massive gust of wind instantly swirls around him, and in a flash, he is swept inside and transported to a completely isolated space. And in that place, a giant monster with glowing, fiery eyes is staring right at him. Before long, the whole world is in an uproar over the news. A permanent gate has collapsed. There has never been a precedent for this. No one knows why it happened. This incident, combined with the recent appearance of so many new gates, it has caused public panic. Even news outlets are reporting it, wondering if it's a sign of a horrific disaster to come. Seeing this news, he feels lucky that the gate only collapsed a while after he had already left, so he isn't a suspect. Although his reward ranking wasn't high that day, besides 30 purple crystals, he also collected an amulet. It helps prevent common illnesses and boosts vitality. It's a treasure that even ordinary people can use. Although it can't cure his mother's illness, it helps her health significantly. And with the money from selling the crystals, he is finally able to get her into the hospital. It lightens his own burden, and then he goes back to grinding in the tower. They say that because there are no monsters on the 5th floor, people have built many bases there. But when he steps in, he can't hide his surprise. It's practically a whole city. Then he passes through the 5th floor where he had once passed out. Then he moves up to the 6th floor. A fight breaks out, but to him it's a breeze. On the 7th floor, he beats the monsters so easily they're practically begging for mercy. By the 8th floor, the number of monsters has increased significantly. Even though he has to slash left and right until he's exhausted with blood and sweat dripping down together, he succeeds in clearing the stage. Finally, he steps onto the 9th floor, a barren wilderness with towering cliffs. Both Du and Io glow with excitement. Not long ago, Du wouldn't have even dreamed of setting foot here. Jigu still remembers Zukvu saying that level isn't the most important thing as long as you don't give up. Then one day his hidden potential will surely be awakened. Back then he thought the guy was talking nonsense, but now it seems he was right. The 2 rings on his hands are glowing incessantly, and he smiles. Io has gained quite a few levels too. Although leveling up is slower because experience has to be shared, he has grown stronger by syncing with them. He originally thought Io was very powerful, but it says it lost all its strength because it had to seal the demon for too long, so it has lost all its power. As for that demon, it doesn't remember much at all. He secretly wonders, could the demon be that giant eye? He just checked L's information and is doing the math. Now that he knows he can get stronger by acquiring more egos, he plans to go find some new ones. Du asks curiously if he knows where to look. He smiles. As it happens, he does know a place. At the item auction, the auctioneer excitedly shouts that an item has been sold for 170,000 won. Jigu, sitting among the crowd, asks Du and Io if they can feel anything. But they can't feel a thing. He's a bit disappointed, but he figures that's fair. There's no way there could be that many egos around. The auction is finally reaching its climax, and the last item has been brought out. It is the highlight of the day, the healing necklace, a treasure that drastically boosts recovery speed. The entire hall immediately erupts into chaos. But when it appeared, Du and Io chirped in unison that it was a real avatar. By late afternoon, as Jigu blended into the crowd leaving the auction house, his mood was a bit down. Who would have thought the auction would be so tough? The prices were astronomically high, but Io comforted him, saying that it was the main item after all. As for Du, it couldn't go a day without being scolded or it wouldn't enjoy its meal, so it said it was because he was too broke. However, this time, instead of getting angry, he flashed a weird, toothy grin, thinking that at least he had managed to sell the paralysis daggers. Fetching a whole 100,000 won, Du immediately showed its disgust at his hideous face, but he kept that stiff smile and blurted out that he loved Du and Ao to death. The two of them felt uneasy instantly, especially Du, who was faint-hearted and didn't know what kind of episode their master was having. A moment later, Jigu walked out of the supermarket while on the phone with Teshit. He didn't know what the person on the other end said, but he suddenly replied that he wasn't looking for a party because he had recently been hunting in a gate and dealing with teammates was more exhausting than fighting monsters. Hearing that the other guy flared up immediately, clearly having told him to be careful. He quickly defended himself, saying it was only a rank F. He told him again that if he dropped all his gear, he was just a level 1 kid, so he couldn't climb ranks and couldn't hunt alone. He didn't exactly have other options. Then, seeing the light turn green, he prepared to hang up. But before doing so, he didn't forget to remind him not to forget to treat him for his promotion. After hanging up, he fell into deep thought like an old man. It wasn't that he didn't like climbing the tower, but the fact that Du needed time to absorb blood made him much slower. Moreover, that gate brought in huge profits. He sighed and stopped overthinking it, figuring there would be a way eventually. At least he had resolved the immediate problems. He shook the bag in his hand, feeling happy that he could even buy beef for dinner now. Io suddenly marveled at how much money its master made. But he was so frugal with his spending. Du being quick to run its mouth before its brain asked if Ao meant their master was a stingy miser, which made him lose his temper and ask when was the last time he taught it some manners. It was immediately reminded of that painful memory. Then it quickly put on the look of an obedient child and apologized. Talking about making money like this was hard for him. He had to earn as much as possible as fast as possible to move house, because he wanted Du and the others to live in a safer place. In the quiet of the night, he walked up the stairs alone, and then suddenly he opened his eyes wide in shock. A spatial rift was slowly appearing before him. It expanded, glowing brilliantly, and he stared in disbelief. 3 blue beams of light rapidly spread out, covering the scenery around the center of the rift. It emitted an incredibly powerful energy. He wasn't sure and guessed it was a gate. What should one do if a gate appears? One, do not panic. A newly formed gate is not dangerous. One, call 119 or the competent authorities and leave the area immediately. 2, do not approach. Entering an unranked gate is extremely dangerous even if you are a player. 4, entering a gate without the association's permission can result in up to 5 years in prison or a fine of up to 10,000 won. 3, always keep evidence. The fact that someone else discovered the gate before the association confirms it can cause conflict. If you are the first to discover the gate, please keep evidence. The discoverer will have the right to clear the gate first. This right can be sold or traded, signed by the Player Management Association Gate Management Board. At this moment, Otis was working in his office when he received information about a new gate. He clicked to see it and was surprised to find it was near Jigu's house. He took a sip of coffee to check the name of the reporter, and then he was startled, choking on it. He shouted out loud upon realizing it was Kim Jigu, his voice ringing out loudly enough to pierce the door, making many employees outside curious and gossiping. A while later, at Jigu's place, an association employee closed his briefcase and told him that if he did not enter the gate within the next 5 days, he would lose the priority right to clear the gate first, and it would be put up for auction. Then he reminded him to follow all the warnings he had explained, and finally he solemnly thanked him again for reporting it so quickly. After saying that, he turned to call Teshit, who nodded and stepped forward, praising him for a job well done. He then offered to speak privately with Jigu. The two quickly headed to a nearby coffee shop. Seeing Teshit mix coffee with a strange, unique recipe, Jigu worried if that would be too sweet. But he didn't find it too sweet at all. Good coffee is all about the syrup. After stirring it well, he didn't hesitate to gulp it all down the glass, quickly empty. He refreshingly slammed it down on the table, making the staff card on his chest tremble violently. It fell right onto the ground, immediately after Teshit turned to Jigu and asked tentatively about the F-rank gate. "Are you planning to go in alone? I don't understand where you get that kind of confidence." Jigu heard this, and could only silently marvel that Teshit truly understood him, confidently replying that he was stronger than what Teshit imagined. Teshit wasn't sure about that, but he was certain Jigu was incredibly stubborn. Caught right in his weak spot, Jigu could only offer a dry laugh. Teshit, with the look of an old father stressed by a rebellious child, he asked how many floors Jigu had climbed. Jigu nonchalantly announced he had conquered the 11th floor. Having just completed the 10th floor test earlier that day, Teshit was curious about Jigu's level, but the guy didn't bother to say a word because Teshit surely could guess the answer. Teshit fell into thought for a moment, then abruptly declared, 4 days. His meaning was, Jigu should prepare thoroughly for 4 days before coming to see him, because Teshit needed to verify if Jigu had enough strength to enter it alone. If he only prepared sloppily, he wouldn't let Jigu enter for anything. The 4-day deadline passed in a flash. Teshit led Jigu into a room filled with shades of green. Inside, weapons were scattered everywhere. Jigu couldn't help but be amazed that the association's basement had such a place. According to Teshit, this used to be a combat training facility. But now no one even bothers with it. Jigu scanned the room, took it all in, and stepped inside. The space was truly much larger than he had imagined, and the walls were even reinforced with a barrier. It was a real eye-opener. He had definitely underestimated this association. Teshit suddenly asked what Jigu thought, catching him off guard. Teshit then reiterated his invitation for him to join the association. He believed that by now, Jigu could become a full-time employee, or at least take on some other position. Jigu thanked Teshit for his kindness, but ultimately had to decline. The reason was that he didn't want to be tied down to one place just yet. Despite being rejected, Teshit didn't get angry at all. On the contrary, he insisted that Jigu would always be welcome. Anytime he changed his mind, Jigu suddenly remembered Theo and asked about how he was doing, since he recalled that when Theo got promoted, the guidance team was disbanded as well. Teshit mentioned he heard Theo had joined the Kaban Guild. That introverted guy seemed much brighter now, like a completely different person, even though it was the first time Jigu had heard of that guild. But he was still happy for Theo and planned to drop by and visit him when he had some free time. He noticed Teshit suddenly roll up his sleeves, revealing muscular, veiny arms, and asked skeptically where his weapon was. Didn't Teshit say they were going to have a spar? Hearing that, Teshit froze, then scratched his cheek, narrowing his eyes in disbelief. It seemed like Jigu was underestimating him just because he was a public servant. So, Teshit decided to show this young whelp right in front of him. A real eye-opener. Out of nowhere, he threw a punch into thin air. The speed was so fast it left an afterimage, and a swirling gust of wind immediately formed from that single punch. It then hurtled straight toward Jigu, who was standing opposite him. Before Jigu could even react, he saw it flying toward him, leaving him stunned and petrified in place. Teshit snapped his fingers, and even more gusts of wind roared out, lashing at Jigu with terrifying force. Jigu felt a chill down his spine. It was shocking to the core. At this moment, Teshit seemed to have turned into a completely different person, and he warned Jigu that a diamond, even when mixed in the mud, is still a diamond. Don't go underestimating a former high-ranking hunter like me. Teshit's entire body emanated a thick, powerful aura. He couldn't wait to school this snot-nosed brat. So he proactively provoked him, telling Jigu to stop yapping like a dog and just dive in for a real fight. Even though he knew he couldn't possibly take down Teshit, there was no way Jigu would just stand there and take a beating, so he immediately entered a state, ready for battle, not forgetting to politely ask Teshit for some pointers. No sooner had he finished speaking, as if sensing something ominous, Jigu's eyes widened in shock. Before he even knew it, Teshit's foot was hovering right above his head. No matter how you looked at it, he was clearly planning to stomp him into the ground. Jigu hurriedly summoned his 2 alter egos and used them to slash through the phantom strike. He successfully avoided disaster. However, due to the immense impact, even though Jigu tried to brace himself, he couldn't withstand it and was knocked back a few steps. Both maintained their combat stances, staring at each other. Teshit dropped his guard first, lazily asking if Jigu was actually prepared. Jigu panted heavily and didn't answer, thinking to himself that this guy was truly a high-ranking hunter. It reminded him of Zukvu, seeing Jigu's state. Teshit got annoyed and scolded him to focus on the fight. Letting your guard down inside a gate meant certain death. After getting yelled at, Jigu snapped back to reality, realizing Teshit was absolutely right. It was because he had been way too arrogant. But that didn't mean he hadn't prepared anything before daring to show his face here. 4 days ago, Jigu had visited the player item market where Do Demon and L were. They wondered why he needed more items, saying there clearly wasn't any gear better than what they already had. To avoid attracting attention while talking to them, Jigu pretended to be on the phone. Only then did he explain that his defensive gear was just too trashy. He couldn't go on like this forever. Who knows, maybe he might suddenly find another alter ego. Hearing that, for once the two were obedient, promising to let him know if they discovered another one. Jigu agreed and started wandering around while passing a shop. He suddenly noticed an old set of armor displayed there. It was raw metal armor from an apprentice blacksmith. Nothing special, giving only a +9 defensive rating. After reading that, Jigu was speechless and tossed it aside in disdain. Then he looked at the shop across the way. He walked over to check it out, but the exorbitant prices scared his eyeballs out of their sockets. He went to check a few more shops. If it wasn't total junk, it was overpriced to the point of robbery. A while later, Jigu had a mental breakdown and sat in a corner sulking. Du and L were speechless as well. He felt that life was just unfair. The cheap stuff was like garbage, and the good stuff cost an arm and a leg. How painful is that? While he was drowning in his thoughts about how life isn't a fairy tale, both alter egos suddenly called out in unison, causing him to look up blankly. He only saw 2 adults ahead, and a young boy arguing, drawing a crowd of onlookers to stop and watch. At that moment, the kid angrily retorted to the other 2. "So your grandpa is this great craftsman?" One of them sneered. "A great craftsman whose gear doesn't even have a status window. Give it a rest, kid." But the boy kept insisting. The boy kept bragging about his grandpa's legendary crafting skills, but the guy just got annoyed, mocking him for acting like a walking billboard for a shop that didn't sell anything. "Even if we went, we'd just get kicked out anyway." Too lazy to deal with the hassle, he and his gang walked away. The boy watched them go, cursing under his breath. Just then, Jigu walked up and called out to him. Seeing that he had this boy's attention, he got straight to the point, asking for directions. But afraid the kid wouldn't get it, he specifically emphasized that he was looking for his grandfather's shop. The boy fell silent at that. Then he immediately lit up and agreed, happily leading the way to a dim, secluded spot. Jigu stared at the kid, wondering if he was really making the right call by trusting him. He checked with his gear, and they all insisted he was sure about this, even telling him that all the clothes the kid was wearing were ego items. Io chimed in to enlighten him, explaining that even though those items were artificial, they still possessed a bit of ego power. Naturally, Du got triggered because its spotlight had been stolen, and it snapped at Io to stop interrupting. By now, they had arrived. The boy excitedly opened the door, bragging to his grandfather that he'd brought a customer. But his grandpa wasn't happy at all. In fact, he sounded reproachful, reminding the boy he'd told him not to bring any more customers here. The boy sulked, saying he just wanted everyone to know how amazing his grandpa was. The old man refused to entertain that conversation. He quickly brushed it off, scolding the boy for wearing his handmade gear instead of the nice clothes he had. "If your father sees you in that, he'll be furious." Jigu silently stepped inside. While the boy was still bickering with his grandfather, he was completely captivated by the sight within the studio. Even Du and Io were stunned into silence. Everything in there was an ego item, every kind of gear at every possible rank. Io couldn't believe his eyes. How can one human create so many? At first, Du was amazed too, but then it realized they were only semi-egos. Because they were egos without consciousness, and doesn't ego mean consciousness in Latin? Even so, Jigu was still in shock, standing frozen at the entrance. The old man immediately started shooing them out, saying he had nothing to sell to someone like him. He had no intention of selling his work to someone who couldn't even recognize their value. He was sick and tired of people with eyes that might as well be blind. To his surprise, Jigu said he wanted to buy them. Ji-chun froze, then kept waving him off, adamant that he wouldn't sell. Besides, someone like him couldn't even use this gear. Seeing this, Jigu asked, "If I can use them, will you sell?" The old man just thought he was talking nonsense and told him to get lost once he'd finished looking around. Jigu didn't take offense. Instead, he suddenly read out the info on one piece of gear, unnamed sword level 79. The old man startled, looking at him before slamming his hand on the table and jumping up. He shouted, asking if he could actually see the sword's status. Jigu calmly admitted it, adding that he was curious to see if the old man could see it too. Ji-chun couldn't believe it and burst out laughing. His attitude softened, and he told him to give it a try. After all, a blacksmith's greatest wish is for someone to recognize the value of their craft and put it to good use. Jigu silently examined the sword in his hand, watching as the blade shimmered with a cold, sharp light. He quickly decided, "From now on, your name shall be Sharp." It hit Ji-chun like a bolt of lightning. Minsu was also stunned. A terrifying silence filled the room. They looked at him like he was a complete idiot. Needless to say, he was mortified. Io quickly tried to save his master, saying the sword probably didn't like that name. Jigu awkwardly went along with it to smooth things over. Back in the present, Jigu had regained his fighting spirit, his eyes flashing red as he dashed forward like a gust of wind. Steady and decisive, he launched an attack. He was right in front of him now, dual-wielding, preparing to strike, but his opponent stood completely still, radiating killing intent. Jigu hesitated for a split second, then channeled his strength and slashed straight ahead. But Tesla parried it with his bare hand, easily deflecting the blade. Tesla grew furious, sensing the hesitation in his swing. What he wanted was for Jigu to use every ounce of his strength to aim for the lethal spots. He mocked him, saying that with that kind of effort, he couldn't even scratch an itch. The failed strike left Jigu feeling conflicted. He tried to steady himself, reminding himself that his opponent was a former high-ranking hunter. He needed to focus. He charged in again with Jigu, but Tesla leaned and dodged. He tried to block him with Io, but Tesla evaded easily. Another strike, Tesla moved like the wind appearing behind him, and Jigu's sword slashed through empty air. Suddenly, Tesla unleashed a barrage of punches. Jigu barely pivoted using his sword to block the onslaught before quickly trying to counter, but Tesla just leaned away. Tesla punched the spot where he was standing multiple times. Jigu ducked just in time to avoid them, then vaulted up, sweeping his sword in an arc through the air. Tesla reacted instantly, spinning 180 degrees and sliding behind him. Jigu spun around and brought his dual blades down hard, but Tesla vaulted backward to dodge. The duel continued, one attacking one, defending an endless stalemate. Just then, Jigu's eyes widened as he saw Tesla charging at him, radiating pure, murderous intent. Tesla didn't hold back, clenching his massive fist and putting all his strength into a punch aimed right at him. At that critical moment, Jigu remembered something from a few days ago. Back then, he had looked at the pile of gear completely bewildered. Why can't I link with any of them? I'm not even sure if these are real egos. He had sighed and put them away. Jigu had told him they were semi-egos, but they were extremely picky, unlike Io and Jigu, who had no other choice. Those items were different. Io had retorted that it liked him, it wasn't forced, like Jigu said. Seeing Jigu lose his resolve, he decided to give it one last try. Julian clicked his tongue and said, "Give up, you mortal," and I immediately growled, demanding to know who taught it to talk like that. Then, with 3 parts frustration and 7 parts resignation, I touched a piece of armor, muttering as I named it, Dungeon Hate. Suddenly, a miracle occurred, a shimmering halo of 7-colored light appeared. It quickly merged into my body, and at that very moment, the system notified me that I had bonded with the Dungeon Hate ego. But since my stats were insufficient, I couldn't unleash its full power, though that alone was enough to make me ecstatic. Because Dungeon Hate had lost most of its power, it was now at level 7 with 3 strength, 15 agility, 40 stamina, 6 magic, and a skill that transformed it into an accessory capable of reflecting damage. With 12 defense, the moment Tesset punched me, it instantly lit up, activating the skill to reflect the damage I had received. The light erupting from my body was blindingly intense, catching Tesset off guard and making him shudder in shock. Boom, 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 the deafening sounds of impact exploded, turning the entire area into a blinding white void. Jigu was blown back several meters, his back slamming hard against the wall behind him. His internal organs felt completely scrambled, and in his discomfort he coughed up a mouthful of blood before sliding down and face-planting onto the ground. A moment later he struggled to drag his battered body up, coughing incessantly. Suddenly something flew toward him from the opposite side. It was an orange potion bottle, followed quickly by a few more rolling his way. Tesset suddenly told me, "Drink up." Since they were medicinal potions to treat internal injuries, I grabbed one and held it to my lips. Good heavens, I couldn't believe he kept such precious expensive medicine in a beat-up copper bottle like that. It was so damaged. I intended to open it to drink, but my hand was shaking so badly I couldn't even twist the cap off. Just then he announced that I had achieved it, leaving me stunned. He held up his hand, which was covered in cuts, to show me, and repeated once more that I had done it. He hadn't expected me to actually be able to damage him. Remembering the explosive moment just now, he was certain this wasn't an accident. I had done it on purpose. At that moment, he had even seen me smirk when I achieved my goal, and he realized he was the one who had underestimated me. He suddenly grew curious to know how on earth I had pulled that off. I played it coy, saying I was just well prepared. He didn't press further, only reminding me that if the portal wasn't cleared after 1 week, the association would step in. Then he wished me luck. But on the day I was about to enter the portal, Tesset changed his tune and said he was only giving me a 5-day deadline. If I didn't come out by then, he would personally go inside and drag me out by the scruff of my neck. Hearing that, my mouth twitched, and I told him there was no need to be so dramatic. But he wouldn't agree, saying it would be more convenient for him to go in himself rather than deploying the association's forces. He started acting like an old father, preparing to say goodbye to a child going on a long trip. He kept asking if I had brought potions and food. What about smoke bombs, and warned me not to be careless just because it was a D-rank portal. I nodded along repeatedly, though it was getting annoying. Wasn't this place just like the one with the zombies? Why did he have to worry so much? It wasn't like the master was digging his own grave, so why the worry? I also marveled at how he was acting like my own father, caring for me in every little detail, literally. Time was running out, so I turned to bid him farewell and quickly stepped into the flickering, glowing portal. In a flash, the space in front of me shifted. It seemed to be a cave. At the same time, the system announced I had entered the portal. My entire body surged with excitement, hoping this was a permanent portal, though I wondered what if it was. I told myself, I'll make a lot of money, obviously. It then questioned how to know if it was a permanent portal. I pondered that the only way to know was to clear it, and since it was D rank, as long as it wasn't a tower underground or maze type, we would finish it quickly. After that, I said, let's go. The ego was brimming with energy and glowing. Soon enough, I encountered the first monster. My hand sparked with electricity, and I punched the wolf straight in the jaw. It immediately yelped in pain. Then I slammed the wolf to the ground, quickly knocking it out in a heartbeat. I even struck a cool pose and told it, our conversation ends here. However, deep in the darkness ahead, countless red devilish eyes suddenly appeared. They stepped out one by one. All of them were accomplices of the wolf from before. I flashed a bloodthirsty smile. It seemed it was time to level up. The gold wolves with fiery red eyes growled. The system announced, level up. Kim Jigu attacked while running. He almost tripped, then got a notification about accumulated damage increasing. A gold wolf tried to take the opportunity to bite Kim Jigu's rear end, but luckily I caught it. Flashed a confident smile and unleashed a burst of powerful light to successfully take down that wolf. After a while of exhausting struggle, Kim Jigu sat down to rest. A voice from the ring scolded, "You weakling, exhausted already. Stop being so rude to your master." Kim Jigu looked at his watch, silently calculating that about 5 hours had passed. Maybe because it's D rank, they seem no different from idiots. Anyway, it's easy. I grinned, showing my bright white teeth while biting into something, muttering to myself, with my level, it's not exactly easy to get in here. But this time I got lucky. After a long while, the thing he had been biting finally snapped. He muttered to himself that he would probably have to go get ranked, recalling the steps for player ranking where stats are measured without any equipment. If separated from his alter ego, his status would only be at level 1. He wouldn't be evaluated correctly for sure. Even Odyssey couldn't help him with this. Why not abuse a high position if you have it? Over at Odyssey's side, they were picking their ear, feeling like someone was bad-mouthing them. Kim Jigu kept opening his water bottle, lost in thought. Don't reveal it. If the user's stats increase no matter the distance, you can connect with us, Kim Jigu said while drinking. That would be great, but I don't know how. Oh, to increase my own stats? He reminded the puppet alter ego, flicking it instantly and threatening. Watch it or I'll hit you. It whined. Master, you've already hit me, Kim Jigu continued. Besides not knowing how to get stronger, I don't really understand this thing either. A notification board popped up displaying all the necessary information. Among them was a skill called cannibalism, which he didn't quite grasp, so he asked, what does that mean, cannibalism, could it be? The ring instantly guessed his intentions and scolded him, Are you crazy, human? Hearing that, he just chuckled dismissively and replied, I'm just joking. Afterward, he stopped resting and continued on his way. Kim Jigu opened his bag and was surprised to find it was already full. He had planned to buy a new bag with an expansion enchantment, but he suddenly noticed the strength-boosting potions inside and decided to just finish them off. Standing before the cliff was like standing before the gates of heaven. The ring kindly reminded him, this place is radiating the strongest killing intent in the gate. There's probably a boss there. Kim Jigu replied with a nonchalant, reckless expression. I know. That's why I'm chugging these bottles right now. Once he finished drinking, his strength power and agility stats instantly doubled. With a sword in each hand, he kept moving forward, wondering just how far he had traveled. At this rate, the effects of the strength potions are going to wear off. Io reminded him, I can sense a presence nearby. Lu also added, it's definitely getting close. Kim Jigu suddenly discovered a light nearby. There's light. Maybe Io and Lei are there too, Lu suggested. Then let's go check it out. He ordered it to be quiet, but Lu reassured him that only he could hear their voices. Io scolded Lu for being rude to their master, but Lu sulked and told him to mind his own business. It also called him arrogant, noting that the presence seemed to swallow more than half the energy of the gate, unlike Talon, which had been attacked countless times. This creature possessed the traits of a true gatekeeper. Lu exclaimed how impressive it was. Io warned Kim Jigu to be careful. He felt the pressure from this monster was much greater than Talon's. This was a true boss. A golden wolf with glowing red eyes lunged at him at the speed of light. Kim Jigu used both swords to block its massive fangs, then smashed its mouth. He stabbed it, but it was too shallow to cause much damage. Instead, it became enraged and countered, sending him flying backward. He struggled to hold on, thinking, its defense is higher than I expected. There was no other way but to stack up damage. He smirked confidently and muttered, "Not bad." Kim Jigu looked at the golden wolf, which was acting fiercely in front of him. Thinking about the tough opponents before he could finish his thought, he charged forward with his sword and began to counterattack the golden wolf. He attacked with his sword, but it dodged. It retreated but immediately jumped back up, baring its sharp teeth to attack him. He struck its face with his sword hilt and unleashed a barrage of slashes. It grew more and more crazed. A moment later, it lay flat on the ground. Seeing that, he felt his tension ease and let out a sigh of relief. That was close, I almost died. The effect of the potion had just worn off, and without it, he probably would have lost. The golden wolf looked at him helplessly with one eye. He said, "Insignificant," even though he had just won and then used a blade to finish it off. The system announced, "You have defeated the golden wolf. Gatekeeper defeated. You have gained experience. Lu has absorbed the blood of the golden wolf. Lu has increased agility due to absorbing the blood of the golden wolf. Lu has received a new skill. By absorbing the blood of the golden wolf, a new skill has been acquired, indomitable will. When receiving more damage than can be sustained, you will recover stamina faster. Cannibalism skill activated." He was surprised by the sheer amount of information appearing before his eyes. The system notified that Lu had just absorbed the golden wolf. You have successfully transformed the golden wolf into an alter ego. Something fell from the sky, a blue crystal. He wondered, what's going on? No one knew the answer, as they had never heard of a monster transforming into an alter ego before. He decided not to worry about it for now and look into it later. Afterward, he asked Ao, but it didn't know either, and apologized for not being able to help him. He wondered, does this mean Lu carries the alter ego of the golden wolf within? It said there's nothing there. Kim Jigu sat there stunned. He wondered to himself, then what is this? Ao had never used this skill before. An information window appeared. Name, Kim Jigu. Level 1. Occupation, alter ego. Partner exclusive ability. Link skill, alter ego. Synchronization. Kim Jigu didn't know how to use this skill. Recalling his previous failure, he decided to test it later. He checked the benefits of cannibalism and found he had obtained a blue crystal even better than the purple crystal from before. Given its size, it would sell for a lot of money, so he was very happy and decided to go to the reward exchange room. Suddenly, he discovered there was no entrance to the reward room. Elle and Lu were both bewildered when they saw him looking lost. He said he had to touch the gatekeeper's body, but Lu had already eaten the remains of the Kim Lang, hadn't it? Lu lamented, wondering why it was always its fault. Inside the gate was a place where the sun never set. By just the second day, he had cleared all the Kim Jigu trials, desperately searching for the exit. Lu felt like it was taking way too much time, so suggesting he step outside was a good idea, but he refused because if something strange happened like that time in Guri Street, they would start keeping an eye on him. Do you guys even know what would happen? If a gate appears and isn't cleared, a gate break will occur, causing many casualties. He had to finish what he started, thinking he was the cause of it all, so he had to find a way to solve it himself. Elle was touched by his actions, but Lu retorted, reminding him, "That sounds nice and all, but can you clean up the mess you just made, master?" He felt embarrassed and got angry, changing the subject and telling it to shut up, then saying, "I'll be back in 4 days." He had to try to avoid the worst-case scenario. The best way was still to resolve the lingering questions. By the 3rd day, he had searched everywhere on the meadow, but found nothing. As he sat eating, he wondered, should we just kill all the remaining monsters? Elle and Lu both agreed with this idea. After that, they returned to the paths they had initially skipped and wiped out the remaining blue wolves. On the 5th day, he killed the last blue wolf. El praised him, but his concern was not knowing what to do. The tussock hung should have been here by now. I wonder if I should destroy this dungeon. El and Lu suddenly spoke in unison, reminding him of Kim Jigu. All the energy was gathering at one point. A gate opened right before his eyes. He didn't know where that place was. El and Lu explained it was the place of the wolf, the meadow gate. The scene shifted to a bathhouse. The two were chatting in the bathroom. Otis wondered why Kim Jigu was late. He assumed that with Kim Jigu's current skills, it should have only taken 2 days. Kim Jigu told him the truth: he had defeated the boss right from the start. But he ran into a bit of a problem. Otis asked, "You defeated the boss, what kind of problem could there be?" Kim Jigu explained that because the boss disappeared, he couldn't be transported to the reward room. Otis was surprised, then asked how Kim Jigu managed to escape. He recalled everything, the process of killing all the remaining monsters and collecting many crystals, because after all, once the last one was killed, all the gate's energy converged at the boss's location. Kim Jigu recalled that time. He tried his best to run toward the light as the gate opened. The scene afterwards was indescribable. It was like the whole world was breaking into pieces and converging in one place. A golden orb appeared in his palm, and the system announced, "You have obtained a piece of ego." Switching to the reward room, Otis saw him silent for a long time and wondered what he was thinking. He voiced his thoughts, believing the gate itself was an ego. Otis told him, "I've converted all your crystals and rewards into cash and deposited it into your bank account. It's about $50,000 in total." Kim Jigu thanked him and then said he was planning to go to the hospital. Otis kindly offered to give him a ride. Initially, he was a bit hesitant, but he still followed Otis into the pink car. He excitedly zoomed down the road. When they arrived at the hospital, Otis talked with Mrs. Lee Sujin while Kim Jigu and Yu Jung went outside. Leaving space for the two to talk, Mrs. Lee Sujin thanked Otis for caring for her son. He humbly smiled and scratched his head. Seeing Yu Jung yawning repeatedly, Kim Jigu concernedly asked if she had eaten yet. He reminded her that the exam was coming up soon. She stretched and replied that she had only taken a quick nap, so she was still studying normally. He told her not to push herself too hard and to remember to take care of herself. She joked back, "Then give me a sense of protection." An old woman approached them and asked Kim Jigu if he was Yu Jung's older brother. Seeing that she concernedly asked why the old woman wasn't asleep yet, the old woman said she wanted to get some exercise to stretch her limbs. She came over because she heard them talking, then reached out to hold Kim Jigu's hand. She thanked him, saying it was because of him that Yu Jung had become such a good child. She praised him for being a young man full of vitality, then left without bothering them further. Before leaving, the old woman suddenly stopped to warn him that there were several energies clashing with each other, reminding him not to lose himself and hoping he would overcome the obstacles ahead. Kim Jigu didn't know what she meant. The next morning, he stretched and woke up after a refreshing sleep in the hospital. The doctor came to see him to confirm if he was a family member of Mrs. Lee Sujin, to exchange some information. Then outside the city, a gate opened and many people returned happy to finally be back home. They were planning to relax and go for a drink when they saw Kim Jigu standing nearby and wanted to come over to greet him out of admiration. However, both saw that Kim Jigu's complexion didn't look good. Kim Jigu recalled the conversation with the doctor earlier. He said her condition was getting worse. Medication therapy wouldn't last much longer. It was too late. There was one more issue. She had at most 1 year left, and at worst 3 months. In a bad mood, Kim Jigu frantically fought monsters, feeling deeply self-reproachful. If only he could be stronger. Both Lu and El felt he wasn't himself, sensing the pain in his heart. When his mother was seriously ill with almost no cure, Kim Jigu said nothing. He just silently stood in the rain at the 19th floor of the tower. Everyone was buzzing, whispering as they saw him wearing bags full of crystals, admiring his ability. Within just 2 weeks, they climbed from the 11th floor to the 19th. They started feigning kindness, offering to help carry his bags. Among them, Group Z, a collection of dangerous thugs, sent one of their sleazy-looking members to offer Kim a hand. When he tried to take the bag, Kim held a sword to his throat, terrifying the man. He tried to argue back, but couldn't. Kim Jigu gave him a chilling glare, telling him to get lost and not even think about getting anything from him. The commotion between the two drew the attention of the association. Group Z scrambled to pull up their pants and run. Even though they were scared, the guy still managed to spit out one final cool warning. An employee met with Kim Jigu, introducing himself as Heo Sung-hoon. He asked Kim Jigu to cooperate while Kim tried to explain that the red players had their eyes on his bag. Sung-hoon just gave a wry smile, clearly understanding the reason why. Suddenly, he asked if he was the player Kim Jigu. A moment later, before he could even process what was happening, Kim Jigu was already sitting in an office having tea with Otasid, who had invited him. He hadn't invited him to the office for fun. He was there to talk about a cure for Kim Jigu's mother. He revealed that it was an elixir, a panacea capable of curing any illness. But Kim Jigu knew that only 3 such elixirs had ever been found. Otasid explained that the person who first cleared the 50th floor found one. Kim Jigu continued, and the other 2 were rewards for clearing the gates. Otasid was surprised that he knew more than he expected. He mentioned that he had also done a lot of research. Otasid said to him, "Then I don't need to tell you about the connection between the 2 gates, do I?" He was referring to the labyrinth gate. This type of gate is notorious for its difficulty, thanks to the massive number of monsters of varying ranks. It also features gatekeepers and numerous traps, but because it is classified as a mixed gate separate from standard ranked gates, anyone can challenge it as long as they verify their identity. Otasid added that 2 days ago, the 3rd labyrinth gate appeared in the United States. Before Kim Jigu left, Otasid advised him to take a shower before he went. "Sujin will faint if she sees you looking like this. I'll convert the things you brought into cash and deposit them into your account without any fees, so just leave the bags here." After Kim Jigu left, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "I want to smoke again today. Kim Hyung, I've done everything I could think of." Kim Jigu met with Heo Sung-hoon. He told him, "The director told me to see this through to the end if I want a bonus, so I've been assigned to guide you, Kim Jigu." He added that the director had taken care of all the paperwork and plenty of supplies had been prepared so they could leave right away. As he led Kim Jigu away, he suddenly told him to wait a moment on the 20th floor. The system notified him, "You have passed the skill test. Synchronization has evolved into Synchronization I. Kim Jigu, Level 1, Occupation Companion of the Ego. Link ability can link with the ego. Synchronization E skill allows you to use 35% of the ego's power." Kim Jigu thought that ranked skills weren't exactly common either. Heo Sung-hoon felt something was off, telling him that it usually took a normal person an entire day to pass the 20th floor test, but he had done it in less than 20 minutes. It was finished, so this was completely outside his expectations, but he didn't say it directly to Kim Jigu. Kim Jigu asked him, "What time does our flight start?" He felt like he had wasted too much of their time. Heo Sung-hoon told him, "We aren't taking a plane. We are heading to the 5th floor." Kim Jigu arrived at what he thought was the Labyrinth Tower. Although you don't often run into players from different countries inside due to the separated zones, it is undeniable that this tower is linked to the entire world. Both of them went to the 5th floor to the Korean Hunters Association branch office. They stepped into an elevator which surprised Kim Jigu. He never expected there to be such an elevator inside the building. "You mean there's an elevator like this?" Heo Sung-hoon explained that this elevator was operated by a quartz-powered artifact. This place was incredibly important. Kim Jigu didn't know how much they had spent to build it. When they arrived, the scene before Kim Jigu was the International Spatial Teleportation Gate Management Center. He never imagined he would use an international teleportation gate, because he heard they were top secret and managed by each country's association. Heo Sung-hoon said that not everyone could use it. The director Otasid had more influence than they thought. After that, they both went in front of a gate heading to America. Then Heo Sung-hoon told him, "Let's try out the world's fastest mode of transportation." Kim Jigu felt excited as he stepped through the gate. Soon they arrived in Los Angeles, America. Heo Sung-hoon drove the car while Kim Jigu sat and read the documents. There were many high-ranking hunters who had announced their participation in this gate raid. An American named Isol Seol, a European named Athena, and the Monster King of Korea. He worried if he would be okay standing among them. Soon, the car stopped. Sung-hoon announced that they had arrived. This was the hell of the modern era, and the 3rd labyrinth gate had appeared, opening the labyrinth of Hozon. Bon looked from afar and spotted that this was a Korean person he had never seen before. "He's only level 1 with no stats and no special abilities at all." Sung-soo didn't expect. Bon could see all of Kim Jigu's abilities using her own power. Sung-soo felt that Kim Jigu was quite interesting. That face was her type. Kim Jigu swung his 2 swords to fight a giant spider. It also sprayed a massive column of silk toward him, which he held off. Taking advantage of the moment, he shouted to signal Heo Sung-hoon to act. Sung-hoon received the cue, quickly grabbed his long spear, and lunged forward. He jumped up and drove the tip of the spear between the giant spider's two eyes. The spearhead pierced straight into its forehead. Then it vanished into thin air. Jigu complimented him, saying he did a great job, then asked if he had to leave now. Sung-hoon replied, "Yes, 15 hours have already passed." He said that considering the time it would take to get back, it was best for him to leave now. Afterward, they shook hands and exchanged polite pleasantries. Sung-hoon said if he wanted to thank him, he should treat him to a meal next time. He agreed and wished him a safe trip back. Sung-hoon said they would meet again in Korea. After Heo Sung-hoon left, Jigu used endless paint to mark the path. "I've been thinking. It's been a week since Sung-hoon returned, and I can finally handle 3 giant spiders at once without any trouble. But sticking to the same old monsters means I'm stagnating. If I want to get near the boss room, I need tougher monsters to show up." With that thought, Jigu picked up a yarn-like item. He looked at it, wondering what it was, then remembered Sung-hoon mentioning it was Arash's ball of yarn, an item that lets you warp back to the dungeon entrance once. It was a gift from the Bandaseat leader, along with a message: if you run into a monster too strong, just run away, because nothing is more precious than your own life. So don't be stingy, remember those words? Kim Jigu thought he wouldn't use it until he got the medicine, even if he had to die. Suddenly, a shrill scream echoed from somewhere, and the ring on his finger sensed something glowing brightly. Then 2 swords appeared in his hands, radiating powerful energy. Jigu said he heard a girl's voice. Du told him that sound was very suspicious. "It's better not to go there." Hearing Du say that, he replied that even if it were a trap, checking it out wouldn't hurt. It could be a major threat in the future. Both Du and Eo agreed with that point. The person crying for help was Su-dung. She was tied to a tree, calling out. Kim Jigu peeked over and thought, "She's so suspicious. How could a little Korean kid like that be alone in a dungeon? And she even looks a bit like Du." He wondered if it was an illusion or a trap like an anglerfish using the light on its head to lure others in to eat them. So he figured it was all too fishy and decided it would be best to pretend he didn't see anything. Just as he was about to turn away, Su-dung's voice rang out from behind him. She apologized, saying she couldn't afford the hospital bills for her mother. Hearing these words, he stopped dead in his tracks, unable to take another step. Seeing him hesitate, Du muttered that those lines were a bit cliché, and even a 9-year-old wouldn't be fooled. But when he saw her crying, tears streaming down her face, he couldn't help but swing his sword, cutting the vines to save her. Afterward, they went to a corner to talk. He asked her if she'd accidentally gotten separated from her party. She quickly admitted she had been distracted. She told him her name was Su-dung, and that she had a natural talent for buffs as long as someone had talent. Even at 10 years old, you could become a player, but it was tedious to have someone underage in the party. Still, it was worth it because not many people possessed buff-type talents, or innate skills, which is why they brought her to such a dangerous place. After their brief exchange, Jigu gave her a safety zone kit. He said that someone who wanted to help her would likely show up in time if she used it. Suddenly, Su-dung stood up, called him uncle, and said she wanted to follow him. He told her that as a person you have to take responsibility for your own life, and he couldn't help her any further. Plus, he wasn't old enough to be called uncle. Su-dung grabbed his arm, begging and insisting on following him, but he refused because he had his own goal and he couldn't give her the medicine if it fell out. However, in the end, he softened and agreed. Along the way, they worked together perfectly. He was responsible for fighting the monsters while Su-dung supported him with energy buffs. Afterward, for Du, and to absorb the drops left behind after killing the monsters. They had been traveling together for 2 weeks. Su-dung happily told him she had leveled up, and he happily congratulated her. After that, she said that before long she would catch up to him. Suddenly, Jigu sensed something. He peeked out from behind a wall and saw the people approaching. It was a giant guild led by a master from America, Seoul. He was afraid they would mistake him for a spy and attack him, so he had to find a way to escape. The wall he was hiding behind was leveled. Kim Jigu was left stunned and wide-eyed as a sword from Seoul flew past him. One of the confused lackeys asked, "Why did you throw your sword?" He replied with a bit of suspicion, "It's nothing, I must have misheard." In a cave in the forest, Jigu and Su-dung stood there panting. She was so tired she was acting loopy, asking, "I didn't do anything wrong. Why are we running?" He took out his water bottle and replied, "Usually it wouldn't matter. But right now we're tailing them, and the game forbids it because it could lead to an ambush." Su-dung whispered, "It's rare to find players that dirty." Jigu retorted. With a guild that big, it's not rare to find people who want to play games. As she took a sip of water, she asked if they should change routes. He told her, kid, we just need to keep our distance and observe. But looking at it another way, this is actually good. By following the same path as masters like them, we're already heading in the right direction. Looking at the circle drawn on the wall, Jigu said, see, there are signs everywhere because they've already cleared the way. So we can just cruise along and tail them. Now all we have to do is find the boss. As he was saying that, Sudong suddenly vanished, leaving him staring blankly like a lost little deer just standing there in place. Suddenly a thought flashed, something was coming, just as someone's voice rang out, Dodge, master. Siola appeared like a vengeful ghost behind him shouting, Dodge, you idiot! I've caught you now, boy! Jigu didn't have time to react before a hand grabbed him and slammed his head into the ground. His face being shoved into the dirt made Jigu hurt, and he thought to himself, I really don't want to go to sleep. And then Jigu had a long nap. Someone had used the right-hand rule to call him down from the clouds. He said, aha, so you're finally awake, kid. Siola grabbed Jigu's head and asked, who told you to follow me, you little brat? He widened his eyes and thought, oh my Buddha, I don't know English, but it sounds like he's accusing me of following him. See, kid, learning English is extremely important. He leaned down to threaten him. Who are you? If you don't talk, I'll send you to see your ancestors. Don't think you can pull a fast one on me, boy. Jigu turned pale and screamed, you've got it all wrong, man! He leaned in and threatened, tell me who you are, or I'll send you to your ancestors. Don't think you can pull a fast one on me, kid. Jigu turned pale and screamed, you've got the wrong guy, man. I'm just out here hunting. What kind of scouting are you talking about? We're clearly just talking past each other. Neither of us understands a word the other is saying. And then that guy CL even had the nerve to ask if I didn't speak English. Then the guy next to him chimed in, he's lying. He shot a glance and started muttering at Jigu, and I couldn't help but wonder, he's Korean named Johan, part of the Iron Guild. Does he have any idea we share the same blood? He sat down quickly, acting like everyone should know him, and went on as if it were a fact. Hey, I'm super famous, you know who I am, right? Whether I knew him or not, I wasn't going to introduce myself. Then he picked up those bags, held them up, and said, I know you're Korean because I can see this expensive stuff here, before rambling on and eventually apologizing. He apologized for being a bit harsh, saying their guild leader was in a bad mood, and hearing that Jigu naively thought, well, he's actually kind of sweet for bringing an interpreter. Maybe he wants to talk. Then he started interrogating me, asking which group I belonged to. Why were you following us? How could you possibly slip past our guild leader? Feeling completely wronged, Jigu tried to explain, no, man, it's all just a big misunderstanding. I'm just a homeless guy. I'm not in any guild. I'm just out hunting. I'm not stupid enough to try and sneak past a guild leader. I just thought you guys knew I was there and let me follow along. It's funny I can say things like that, but when others say them, it's so annoying. He grabbed his sword hilt and agreed, I hear you, man, I get it. 1 second, he's acting like he believes me. The next, he's pulling out a knife and showing it to Jigu before driving it hard into my thigh, making me scream, we're both human. Why can't you just trust someone for once? It's so messed up. First you tie someone up and then you stab them like that. And then he has the audacity to call me weak, looking at how Jigu was in so much pain he was tearing up. He said, I don't know what kind of idiot brought a weakling like you here, but how dare you try to pull a fast one on us? You said you were hunting, huh? I think the thing you're really hunting is our precious medicine, he said, turning to CL while holding the sword. Look at this weird blade. I can't even see a status window for it, and it's so trash it can't even cut through a monster. That made CL freeze for a good 5 seconds to process it. Then he told him to keep it so they could forge it later. Then after obeying, he looked down at CL's sword and mocked it. That sword is just junk, it can't even compare to my holy blade. He took out a vial of medicine, poured it over the wound on Jigu's leg, and sneered, Must be nice being so rich, huh? No matter how many times I stab you, you won't even pass out. Seeing the look of pain and regret on Jigu's face just made him even more excited to taunt him, Don't look at me like that. I know you're super stingy, so I'm doing you a favor, he said, losing patience and getting right in his face. If it hurts your wallet that much, just tell me whose dog you are. It's true what they say, when you tell the truth in this world, nobody believes you. And just like that, when Jigu said he wasn't anyone's dog, he started using his right-hand rule on him. By now, Jigu had successfully managed to piss him off. He shouted angrily, What are you thinking? We already checked your stats, and even that rope tying you up is just a regular rope. How can you expect us to believe some pathetic weakling like you is traveling alone when you couldn't even break free from a basic rope? Do you take us for idiots? Before he could finish, CL called him over for dinner, so he kicked Jigu in the chest like a soccer ball and walked away saying, "Do yourself a favor and quit the act, man." After the group left, Jigu was left alone with his thoughts, feeling deeply unsatisfied and reflecting on all his shortcomings. After fighting Deceit, he realized he had almost nothing to conquer the dungeon gates. Even though he knew he was just fooling himself, he kept trying, but those strengths were only borrowed. The moment he lost his weapon, he was as good as useless. Somewhere else. A white-haired girl used magic to pinpoint Jigu's location and reported that he was 2 kilometers away scouting near the checkpoint. Then she asked the masked man what to do. Kim Jigu, with his battered body, was still tied to a mini pillar surrounded by countless scattered bottles and a mix of blood and medicine pooling on the ground. Reflecting on the last 4 days, his fingers and toes had been cut 27 times, his bones broken, 63 times stabbed and punctured 127 times, and tortured roughly 200 times. I don't know if it's because he's stupid or just too stubborn, but it drove the whole group of CL's minions to gather around and talk about how Jigu just wouldn't talk. The guy cursed, "He's so damn stubborn." But if he were just a bit more talented, I would have recruited him already. He ordered them to bring over Jigu's sword, saying, "I was planning on melting it down. But a tough guy like him deserves a little respect." And then CL told Jigu that he was going to use his own sword to send him off to meet his ancestors. He held up the sword arrogantly and said, "I'll help you go down in history. You're lucky you know. Let me see you off on your final journey and help you reincarnate successfully." CL aimed the tip of the blade at Jigu and plunged it in, making blood spray like rain. Jigu closed his eyes, secretly relieved that the guy had successfully done something stupid, allowing his connection to his ego to be restored instantly. Instantly, Jigu's eyes widened with rage, a crimson aura erupting from his entire body as he effortlessly shattered the common restraints binding him. Quick as a flash, Jigu lunged for the sword, flipping the tables by thrusting it toward CL. The crowd watching froze for 5 seconds. He didn't even flinch, simply standing still and grabbing the tip of Jigu's blade. CL looked at him with an expressionless face and muttered, Well, looks like you've still got some tricks up your sleeve, kid. No wonder I kept smelling the Demon King's scent around here. I'm not even surprised she's interested in you. She's just playing with you, you little brat." CL asked skeptically, "How are you so capable you even managed to escape a scan that not even the Demon King could beat? You're done for, boy. I'm going to have to interrogate you some more." Hearing his threat, Jigu wondered to himself if he should finally use that secret weapon. Athena, witnessing the scene, ordered an attack. Something flew through the air and pierced CL's arm and arrow. "Athena!" he roared, and there she appeared like a goddess descending. Athena laughed. "Bingo, baby, long time no see, you look like a mess." CL felt insulted. He snapped the arrow sticking out of his arm and took her mockery as a declaration of war on the guild. She found him hilarious and laughed again. "When do you guys ever stop bickering?" Athena swung her hand, sending a spear flying through the wind toward CL. With a blank face, he reached back, drew his sword, and slammed it into the ground, creating a massive shield that blocked Athena's spear. The moment the spear hit the shield, boom! A massive explosion erupted, flattening the surrounding trees and filling the air with dust that blinded the onlookers. After finishing his spell, CL ordered them to capture Jigu alive. He picked up his blade and twirled it, slicing through the shield he had just created, saying, "Let's end this once and for all." Athena caught the rebounding spear and glared at CL with a dark expression. He raised his blade high, ordering an attack on the valley below where a pitiful forest lay. Enduring countless wounds from the battle, an idle bystander watched and asked Jigu, who shivered at the sight. "They're tough as nails, aren't they? Sometimes I wonder if they're gods fighting, or monsters." Jigu looked at his own battered body, still clutching his sword, thinking to himself, "Agree or not, I have no choice. I just have to stand my ground." The guild leader had said he wouldn't kill him, but he didn't say he couldn't accidentally do it. No sooner had he finished speaking than he vanished into thin air, appearing right behind him. Jigu planned a sneak attack, thinking, "I can't let him get away with it now that I know his true face." A sword strike was launched, aimed straight for Jigu's neck. He gasped as it approached. Suddenly, Jigu shouted, "Counter!" The system flashed, indicating it would reflect the damage received. At that same moment, his body shone with a blinding light, dazzling everyone. CL cursed, "What the hell is that?" Before he could finish his sentence, boom! A cataclysmic explosion rocked the very foundations of the earth. When the smoke cleared, it was clear that the guy who didn't know his place had poked a hornet's nest. He lay motionless on the ground, groaning in pain, looking utterly pathetic. Jigu gasped for air, staring at the system notification that he had reached his limit and was beginning to break. Standing in the middle of the chaos was Kim Jigu, and on the other side lay Henry, unmoving. The system reported he had reached his limit and was breaking down. He stumbled toward him like a toddler, raising his sword high. The guy who didn't fear death until he saw the coffin was now begging for mercy. But you don't take food away from a cat's mouth, there would be no mercy. Without a shred of hesitation, Jigu drove his sword deep into him. The guy squealed like a stuck pig. After sending him off to meet his ancestors, Jigu collapsed, swaying. He thought, "It's taking so long, but I'm almost there. But this power is so terrifying I can't stop the bleeding. I'm completely out of energy." Suddenly, a voice echoed, pulling Jigu back to reality. "Are you all right? That swaying silhouette in the wind, is that Du Dung?" The girl got angry and said, "Hey, watch it! That's young master! Du Dung to you!" Seeing Jigu staring, she gave a wicked grin and asked, "How will you repay me if I save you? Would you lay down your life to save me? Or would you spend the rest of your life as my slave? What will you choose?" Jigu remained silent for a moment, then shakily raised a finger. "One more thing, I will destroy CL and the A Guild." Du Dung replied, "Wait, you said one thing, but I count 2 demands here. But that's fine. Let's make a pact. Truly a man who gets an inch and takes a mile?" Jigu tried to ask for one more favor regarding the sword on the bearded man who was looking at the unconscious Jigu. Du Dung asked, "Why so greedy?" Bayan walked over and said, "Jigu is an interesting person." Hearing this, she ordered him to keep a close eye on him, for he hides the power of a demon within. "Someone will awaken it eventually." Du Dung pointed to the sword and asked, "Did you see how he killed that idiot? It wasn't normal. He targeted his weak point perfectly, even though it was his first time he has that kind of instinct. Not a shred of hesitation or mercy." Bayan looked at the corpse and asked, "What should we do with him? Looks pretty serious. Since he's a high-level character, he might heal on his own." She heard this and said, "Forget him. Let him fend for himself. If he survives, he might still be worth something. If he dies, just bury him." Du Dung's hair began to turn purple. She smiled. "Revenge is a dish best served cold. A gentleman can wait 15 years for revenge." She mentioned the Demon King was coming, but Ban showed no emotion, muttering something nonsensical which irritated Du Dung, who shouted, "Only the brainless would call her by that name. I am the one who will kill the Demon King." Jigu woke up inside a cube looking bewildered, thinking, "Who am I? Where is this seriously?" After a moment, he realized this was his own dream, the nightmare that's been hounding him for 5 long years. Seeing the rope hanging there, Jigu approached it, whispering to himself. After meeting Du, it vanished. Piercing through a thin veil, he realized it was a unique skill, so he quickly snatched it up. Who would have thought it was just a bucket? Jigu closed his eyes, remembering the time he slipped through a doorway and got stuck at the bottom of a well. Thinking back on it, he looked so ridiculous. Wasn't it just a matter of grabbing the rope to get up? But isn't that my own power? As he was thinking, a crimson figure appeared behind Jigu. Du cursed, calling him a failure. "You're struggling just to break a barrier. So what if you're borrowing power? Does that make you different from anyone else? Whether it's through training or luck, if you have it, it's yours, you idiot." Right after the scolding, a figure appeared behind Jigu, saying, Du was right. She reached out her hands affectionately and said, "My power is my master's. Please don't despair." Jigu's eyes widened like he'd just returned from the afterlife. Ban asked, "You're awake." It made him suspicious. Who was this guy? Did he have any connection to the Demon King? Ban pointed out the sword's location to Jigu. As soon as he saw the person and the sword, they stared longingly at each other, as if they had been separated for ages. Seeing him awake, the man told him to rest. "I've given you first aid, but don't move around too much. You could be in danger at any moment." Just as he finished speaking, the sky was suddenly covered in a blood-red hue. Jigu looked up to see Su Jung floating in the air, casting a spell that cracked the ground open. Countless massive boulders were sucked into the air, leaving him terrified. He asked Ban, "What is that?" Ban replied cheerfully, "That's a monster commander. First time seeing one, right? Look at that giant monster." He then introduced her as the master of this labyrinth, the monster commander. Hojun roared. While Jigu was stunned, shocked, and floored by the sheer size of the creature, Ban proudly introduced her again as the master of the labyrinth. "Monster Commander Hojun," he thought to himself. Don't tell me I have to go head-to-head with something like this. Sujung floated in the air, smirking at Hojun. Instantly, a massive portal opened behind her, leaving Jigu frozen for 5 whole seconds. Seeing him like that, Bon said, "Come over here and stand next to me. If you just stand there like a daze, you're gonna end up dead, kid." From his palm, drops of blood fell to the ground, creating a deep crimson barrier circle. Enclosing the two of them, Bon noticed Jigu realized it was a shield and said, "Not so dumb after all, are you?" Standing in the shield, they watched Hojun and saw that from the portal, the countless winged monsters flew out, all screeching as they charged straight at her. Suddenly, something brightened. Sujung unleashed her unique skill, the one that made the monsters scream, a pitch-black Super Pro sword. Jigu's jaw dropped as he watched her triumphantly swing the blade forward. She sliced a long path into the ground. He remembered the words that said they were no different from gods clashing, and the pitch-black sky regained its light. A massive fissure stretching for miles had been created. In the exchange room, holding the box with the potion inside, Jigu was overcome with emotion. "Oh, wow, I actually did it." Even though the process was grueling, why did it feel like a hallucination, not real? Despite the joy, he felt a crushing sense of disappointment drowning out all the happiness. Sujung happily spoke up. "I said I'd do it, didn't I? I know you'll have many opponents in the future, but I probably don't need to help you anymore, right?" Jigu looked up and asked if she was Sujung. She nodded repeatedly, saying she was also Korean. Looking down at the rare potion in the box, Sujung asked about Bon's. Learning that his was also a potion, she handed her own to Jigu, surprising him. She said, "Didn't you wish to destroy the A Guild? Since you're not in good health, this will help you a bit. Anyway, my goal is to become a commander, so this doesn't really matter. Think of it as me investing in your wish." Taking the bottle, Jigu stood still thinking, "I can't believe it. This is the thing I struggled so hard to get. And now it's being given away so easily. I can't keep sponging off others like this. I really have to step up. If I take this, Du is going to nag me to death." Du was thrilled that Jigu was finally using his head. Jigu asked, "Why would you just give this to me?" Without asking for anything in return. "You want me to be your slave for the rest of my life, don't you?" Hit right on the mark. Sujung felt guilty and said, "No way, kid, I just want to take you on as my apprentice." Hearing that, Jigu let out a loud, "Huh," which annoyed her. "Stop yelling at me. You're just a weakling right now, but once you clear the 50th floor..." As she spoke, Sujung reached out and touched Jigu's cheek, flirting. "That's when I'll take care of you." It caught him off guard. The spot she touched immediately stung. Sujung explained that it was a mark of their covenant, and from this moment on, he would lose all his power. "But I'm too lazy to follow you around, so listen carefully. By the way, that sword you're carrying is quite toxic. While the portal is still open, I'll teach you how to strengthen your sword." Seeing Jigu's surprised look, Sujung added, "Drink that potion now. Since this is a dangerous method, this will be your first lesson as a disciple." Meanwhile, in the forest where Jigu was being held, the area was trashed, the trees were smashed, and they were still going at each other relentlessly. Jigu held his sword with trembling hands, aiming at ACL, while his waist kept flashing danger warnings. "Don't trust her," Du said in a panic. "Master is losing control." Jigu watched as CL grabbed the short-haired girl by the hair. He lost his focus, not knowing what to do. The guy finally spoke up. "So this is your little product, huh? How could you play so dirty? Waiting until I wasn't paying attention to steal the boss?" Sudung laughed upon hearing this. "It wasn't yours to begin with. Whoever gets here first gets to keep it." Then she cheered Jigu on, telling him to follow her instructions, which made him secretly wonder if she was a devil. Jigu could have lived a peaceful life, but no. He chose the hard way. He rushed out to provoke that madman. "Hey, you punk ACL, I'm gonna send you to the afterlife." Even though he was provoked, CL just bared his fangs and threatened him, and that little bit was already enough to make him want to wet his pants. Like a god, he lunged right in front of Jigu, sneering word by word. "You've changed, haven't you? You've become one of her people, huh? It's always been like this, hasn't it?" Then CL brought his blade down hard and shouted, "But whatever, it doesn't matter. Either way, I'm sending you to see your ancestors with this blade." Facing such a life-or-death situation, thankfully, Jigu had chugged a whole bottle of medicine earlier. After the system announced, the platform reset, his whole body transformed, and his eyes lit up. As Sudung and Ba'an waited for the results, Jigu turned and said one thing. "Nothing changed. I just feel a bit stronger, that's all." She helplessly replied, "What did you expect? It's not a magic potion, it takes time to kick in. You'll realize the changes soon enough. Back to the present. Jigu's gaze had changed. He thought to himself, it really is just a small change. But it could be the difference between ascending to immortality or ascending to heaven, dying. Now, Jigu could count down every second to dodge CL's attacks, leaving him stunned. He quickly stepped back, thinking, oh yeah, I dodged it. Those strange movements. I can see every single one of them. Watching Jigu Sudong felt happy. Congrats on taking another step on the path to becoming an expert. Remembering what Sudong said, the Demon King was right. A rookie like you can't compare to those old experienced monsters. Even with luck, you can only dodge one attack. You know you don't use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken, right? Back to the present, Sudong spoke through his mind to Jigu, saying it wasn't that CL was careless, but he didn't care about a shrimp like Jigu. And with just one move, he was able to recognize your growth, even your communication with me through your mind and the elixir. Once he figures out the situation, he'll get a bit more serious. CL swung his sword, activating the power of the holy sword, then decisively aimed to slash Jigu's neck. But Sudong's voice rang out, "Don't just stand there like a statue. Use your sword to block it." Instantly, he raised his sword to block. The blade in Jigu's hand suddenly glowed. The system flashed a notification, Holy Sword L has awakened its ability and is absorbing the power of Holy Sword C. A-O-N. But because the level is too low, it can only absorb a small portion. But even that was enough to scare the living daylights out of CL. Jigu calculated quickly, taking advantage of the moment he was confused, because his attack was blocked, and the moment he hesitated, because his holy sword's power was being stolen. Then he jumped backward to put as much distance as possible. Jigu remembered the scene where Hyo Sung-hoon gave him something and said that was how to escape the gate. Back to the present, Jigu held the silk roll of a rock S-web, extending it so the silk wrapped around CL's legs. After regaining his composure, CL grabbed his sword and lunged forward. He shouted, "You think I'll miss?" Before he could reach him, Jigu held up his middle finger. The last strand of silk wrapped around his whole body, helping Jigu vanish just before CL could swing his blade. He was so furious he turned blue and cursed, "That little piece of shitty." CL breathed heavily like a buffalo, then turned to look at Sudong and said, "Now shall we have a little chat?" Countless clouds of black smoke hovered around her. With a smirk, Sudong deployed her power. CL clicked his tongue in frustration. Damn it. Elsewhere, countless tanks were parked and a mysterious red light glowed everywhere. A car was approaching, and the person inside was none other than Hyo Sung-hoon. As soon as he saw him, Jigu smiled happily. As dawn broke, Jigu was talking to TC about Hyo Sung-hoon had brought his mother back, and they agreed to meet in Korea, then said goodbye. Lee Soo-jin slowly opened her eyes and saw Jigu sitting in front of her. She burst into tears and said, "I wanted to see you one last time before I die. That's really all I wanted. Thank you." Holding Lee Soo-jin's hand, he told her not to worry. She started to say she had something to tell Jigu, but before she could finish, Lee Soo-jin began coughing violently. Jigu quickly opened the vial of elixir and poured it into Lee Soo-jin's mouth. After a moment, a purple light radiated out. Jigu let out a breath of relief. "It's all okay now." Then he collapsed next to his mother. Du calmly said, "I know he's been through too much today." Meanwhile, Io was extremely worried for Jigu, afraid that if he kept following Sudong, he would end up in danger. Dulin said, "There's nothing we can do, so let's just let him rest for now and see where things go." While Jigu was completely knocked out, Lee Soo-jin's whole body suddenly started glowing, and she slowly opened her eyes on her way home. Dudung kept calling Jigu, but he wouldn't pick up. She was furious, complaining to herself that after disappearing for a whole month, he only sent her one single text message. He wouldn't even answer her calls. The moment she opened the door to the house, she exploded, shouting, "Appa, are you kidding me? You told me to come home, but then you won't even answer your phone. What is that about? I even had to skip my tutoring class. Do you know how worried Mom—" Suddenly, a voice rang out, leaving her stunned. "Is that you, Dudung?" her mother asked, causing Dudung's eyes to well up as she burst into tears. She called out, "Mom," but then asked, "Who are you?" Jigu was sleeping in the room when he heard the sounds of happy laughter coming from outside, which woke him up. He sat up and muttered, "I smell Mom's soybean paste stew." He got emotional, almost crying as he thought, behind that door, "Is the scene I've been dreaming of for so long a scene I would have traded my life for?" But then he composed himself. He couldn't let his mother see his face like this. He needed to put on a smile to greet her. He cheerfully opened the bedroom door and walked out, saying, "Mom, did you sleep well?" Then, "What the fuck? Who are you?" He stood frozen in his tracks, unable to process the young woman who looked younger than his mother appearing in their house. She just smiled and said, "You're awake, dinner is ready." Later, while chatting with Jigu Du-dung, learned that he had entered the Heavenly Gate, defeated the high-ranking elites inside, and retrieved the divine herb to heal his mother, a turn of events that even Jigu hadn't fully anticipated. Seeing his mother recovered and looking even younger than before, she didn't know whether to be happy or terrified. She then mentioned wanting the divine herb herself, but Jigu told her she was asking for too much. He looked concerned and said, "You've worked so hard for Mom, haven't you?" When his mother apologized to her son, he replied, "It's nothing, Mom. It wasn't that much trouble, really." Early the next morning, Otsid came to the house to talk to Jigu in private. He shyly accepted a thank-you gift from Jigu's mother for looking after him, and afterward they headed to a nearby pub. He asked, "Jigu, tell me, how on earth did you manage to get that divine herb? I had to hold myself back so hard from calling you about it." As he drank, he kept talking, but Kim Jigu wasn't really paying attention. Instead, he asked him straight out, "Are you interested in my mom?" The question made Otsid choke, spraying water all over Jigu's face. Flushing red, he stammered, "What did you say?" Jigu remarked, "Your face is bright red, you know. I've been suspicious for a while now." While wiping his face with a tissue, Jigu said, "I know you've been looking after my mother whenever I'm away. And I know it's not just because she looks younger, though. You were definitely more obvious about it today. Anyway, I'm rooting for you both. If Mom ends up with someone like you, I don't think my dad would mind." Otsid just turned red and stayed silent, then quickly changed the subject. "Let's get back to what we were talking about." Jigu asked him about that matter. "Did you bring the soundproof barrier generator?" Otis replied. "I have it in the car, but what's it for?" Jigu said the story was long and complicated, leaving Otis completely confused. A moment later, Otis flew into a rage, shouting, "What those sons of beaches actually did that? Give me their address, I'll strip them down and make them eat raw chicken." Jigu helplessly urged him to calm down. Afterward, he sighed, "Thanks for getting so worked up for me, but there's no need to be this angry. I'll take care of those bastards myself." Then Otsid offered some advice. "Hey, revenge should come from a place of inner peace." He stood up, pointed a meat-laden chopstick at Jigu and said, "Speaking of inner peace, you can't live on an empty stomach, eat your meat." Jigu, having no idea what he was talking about, asked blankly, "What are you talking about?" Jigu brought up the revenge matter again. "I still have another debt to settle. What's the status of the guardian beast on the 4th floor?" Otsid informed him that a C-rank subjugation team had been dispatched just yesterday. There are 37 people in total, and 70% of them are C-rank hunters. That's enough manpower to take down a 30th floor guardian beast. So they should be sending word of their success soon. Jigu replied, "What a shame, I was hoping to blow off some steam and get some exercise." Meanwhile, in a dark, gloomy forest, a man was running for his life, gasping, "I have to report this to the association." That the entire C-rank subjugation team, a massive, ferocious monster loomed behind him, has been completely wiped out. Then only his desperate scream rang out. A voice echoed from his radio. "Our current priority is to check on the condition of you and your mother after consuming the divine herb. This isn't something that can be handled at a regular hospital," he continued. "But don't worry, Otsid will help you take care of it. Next is about the gold. I've handed over half the proceeds from the divine herb to Chief O as you requested." He looked at Jigu and smiled. "He nearly fainted when he heard the news, but I told him it was your wish, so you wouldn't owe him anything anymore, and he accepted it reluctantly. Let's see after taxes and other odds and ends. There's still about 20 million left. About your plan to move the family to a new house, I've scouted a few places north of the Han River." He looked at Jigu and added, "Per your family's requirements, I've narrowed down the options, so you just need to make the final decision. Do you have any questions?" Jigu was blank for a moment, then said, "No, I understand. But why are you the one choosing the house now? We're moving, after all." He took Jigu's phone and said, "Is that all you wanted to ask? Per Chief Otsid's orders from today on, I will be your personal assistant. I look forward to working with you." He saved his name in Jigu's phone as Hyo Sung-hoon. Jigu thought, is he always like this? That afternoon at the Dongdaemun area, Hyo Sung-hoon helped Jigu carry a few suitcases. He asked, "I've prepared everything according to your instructions, but what are you planning to do with this?" "That's 8 million in cash." Jigu replied, Some equipment I bought on credit was destroyed, so I'm paying off my debt and buying some new gear. Heo Sung-hoon wondered, exactly how much was it? Jigu's answer shocked him. 3.5 million, Jigu thought. That old man is insane for lending me 3.5 million without blinking, but I'm just as crazy for accepting it without a second thought. Looking back, I have no idea what I was thinking, though I did manage to pull it off in the end. As Gwanji Chun was forging a weapon, a child ran in and called out, "Grandpa, we have a guest." He wondered, a guest? Heo Sung-hoon said he'd wait for me upstairs, so I thanked him. Then the manager remarked, "It's only been a few months and you don't even recognize me anymore." I greeted him and asked how he was doing. He replied, "Of course I'm fine. I received the money you sent through the association, though it was a bit short." I scratched my head and apologized, but manager Ji-chun continued, "I'm just messing with you." Looking at the letter attached, anyone could tell it was essentially a will. I chuckled. "Well, I came to pay the rest of it, didn't I?" He laughed and replied, "Honestly, I didn't think you'd still be alive to come back here. I had already written it off as your funeral money and cleared your debt. If you insist on paying, I'll gladly take it." He looked over my body and asked, "So the armor finally died, huh?" I told him, "Yeah, it saved my life." He clasped his hands and sighed. "Well, that's what it was made for, so I have no reason to be sad. Still, the life of a piece of armor is pretty tragic." "You'll tell me about it, won't you?" About its final moments. The next morning, Dujung woke up and saw me and Mom getting ready to head out. She asked where we were going, and I told her I promised to take Mom for a checkup today. She froze, stared at me, and shouted, "Did you get taller?" I was baffled. "What?" Back in the fitting room, Sung-hoon chimed in, "Kim Jigu, I thought you were a model or something." "Why aren't you a celebrity?" I said shyly. "No, stop it." He pressed on, "How did you grow 3 centimeters in one night? And you've got a ton of new muscle. That elixir must be the real deal, huh? Can you give me a bottle?" I calmly replied, "My sister said the exact same thing." I thought to myself, maybe it doesn't look like much, but it's a huge change. Even though I exercised like a madman, my muscles have already hit their limit. I guess this is what resetting the limit means. Suddenly, Du chimed in. "Even so, my master is still a weakling." I told her to shut it. A moment later, Sung-hoon announced the test results, starting with endurance. "This is comparing you to 25 years ago." He looked back at me with a smirk. "You've already broken the world record in the Olympic category." I was confused and asked, "Why 25 years ago?" He put on his coat and continued, "What about current standards? I don't really watch the Olympics." "Oh, right. Well, Heo Sung-hoon said, 'You're about a rank 10. I asked if he was looking for a fight. Then he added, "But player Kim Jigu, don't be surprised." I exclaimed, "What my mana control and laws? Fish rank if you have the potential of a high ranker," he said with absolute certainty. I looked blankly and said, "Okay." He then remarked that I was way too calm. I replied, "I already told you not to be surprised." Heo Sung-hoon got annoyed and said, "Act a little surprised, will you? I said you're a high ranker." I thought helplessly, it's old news anyway. Moments later, Otisid pushed the door open and asked if I was done. I said yes, then asked, "What about my mom?" He continued, "Not only is she perfectly healthy, she's actually stronger than the average person. But the truly amazing thing is, even as a civilian, she can now use items." I jumped and shouted, "What?" Otisid looked at his phone and said, "Amazing, right? Well, I'll give you the details later. I came to see you about something else." "Why haven't you been hunting lately?" I replied, "Hunting? No, I'm taking a break for now." I realized I was still absorbing the power of the CEO. EO apologized to me, but I told her it was fine. Otisid asked when I planned to start again, and I hesitantly said, "Maybe in a week." He thought about it and said, "Then save that time for next week." I asked why, and he continued, "We've lost contact with the C-rank conquest team. We're forming a B-rank team to send out next week." I asked, "So you mean?" He answered, "Exactly. The level 4 Guardian hasn't been captured yet, but that's not the main issue." Otisid's face turned serious. "It seems that bastard might be hunting players to grow stronger." My expression darkened. B-rank teams usually have at least 30 members, with over 60% being B-ranks. But as for me, our protagonist, my rank even after drinking the elixir was completely non-existent. I ran to the general manager's office, frustrated. After hearing my complaints, Otisid said, "Just do the official rank assessment. Now you don't have to worry about not being able to use equipment. Even if your physical attributes might only be ranked as D, if you include your potential, you'll easily reach B rank." At this point, I slumped onto the table exhausted and muttered, But B rank means I have to be over level 100. The problem is I'm only at level 1. I continued, "These ranking criteria are crazy. Do you think this is okay, Chung? Isn't it way too vague to just count potential? Odyssey immediately replied, we might call it potential, but your mana capacity and how you use it relate directly to combat skills. Just look at those mutants. Their level doesn't really matter, does it? There's an interesting theory that level isn't actually everything. The increase in stats per level up is the real core factor, especially since players' levels are now a mystery due to security reasons in this current climate. If Kim Jigu goes through an assessment, he'll definitely be the center of attention. I mean, a bloodthirsty guide who couldn't level up suddenly hitting rank B. That would be a huge deal. Hearing this, Jigu just sighed, muttering to himself, I told you not to call me that nickname. And you even added more to it. Oates continued, arms crossed, calmly adding that he was going to cause some controversy regardless. I can't stop the press from calling you a player with the potential to reach high-ranking status. He even asked teasingly, what, you don't like that? Kim Jigu was actually just worried about being tracked by John Gu, as attracting too much attention would be disadvantageous for him. Otis had thought Jigu was being overly cautious, though he still respected his decision. But he also had to admit his own authority was limited. He couldn't just grant Jigu a rank willy-nilly. Jigu looked up a bit surprised to hear him calmly say, just clear your schedule. I thought you already had a plan. Thesis replied, looking surprised. I didn't expect you to refuse like that. I thought for sure you'd do the assessment. In a world where high ranks get treated completely differently, Jigu's refusal really caught Thesis off guard. While Jigu was scratching his head, Thesis had an idea and handed him a list of guilds participating in this raid. He suggested, if you join a guild temporarily, you can participate in the raid. At the very least, I can act as an intermediary to introduce you to them. Jigu looked at the list and replied skeptically, who would actually take in a complete stranger? Besides, if I leave the guild right after the raid ends, that would increase the number of people leaving the guild, and consequently, I'd be hurting their reputation. While pondering the list, Jigu's eyes accidentally stopped on the Morning Star Guild. So, Jigu decided to join their team. Just then, Dong-tu Kim, the team leader, was speaking quite formally. I have been appointed as the captain for this team. The Tamer team for this raid. We will depart as soon as we finish roll call. I look forward to working with everyone. All the members present responded enthusiastically. We look forward to working with you too, sir. Then the whole group set off. Kim Jigu walked with Kim Seongpu, who kept thanking Jigu for helping him get into the C-Rank Guild. Seongpu smiled and said, it's nothing, we all owe you our lives. And I feel bad that I can't do more to help you. We're just a C-Rank Guild here to provide support. Jigu replied modestly, you've already helped me a lot just by saying that. As long as I don't have to be a baggage carrier, I'm happy. If there's an opportunity, I'll definitely join the fight. The two talked back and forth before switching the subject to Captain Dong-tu Kim. I heard he's about to be promoted to A rank, which means he'd become a ranker. Jigu just muttered, oh, I see, secretly thinking to himself, is that really so special? I mean, compared to the Demon King or iZone CL? A mysterious voice rang out as if reading his mind. That woman is an exception. As if reading his thoughts, the voice echoed, why is your standard set so high anyway? While he was lost in thought, Kim Ha-noon ran up from behind, grabbing his arm and exclaiming, hey, Mr. Guide! You look like you've completely transformed, don't you think? Jigu looked confused. What do you mean? Hearing that everyone around them chimed in curiously. That's true. Did you get plastic surgery or something? Someone else cut in. Hey, that's really rude to ask. Seeing this, Jigu wondered if he had really changed that much. The mysterious voice echoed again. Your aura is completely different now, isn't it? Finally, you look like you might actually leave an impression on others. Jigu turned back and gave a strained smile, explaining, it's not plastic surgery. I think it's because I acquired a specialized skill on the 5th floor. I just grew a little taller. The mysterious voice scoffed. Making excuses, are we? As soon as he finished, someone exclaimed, wow, I'm so jealous I didn't even know a skill like that existed. I wish I could get a skill like that too. The mysterious voice cursed, damn, they actually believe him. Jigu quickly shut it up. Shut up. The protagonist's party continued on. Unexpectedly, a B-rank Tamer team had taken notice of them. Now, on the 4th floor of the Tower Dong 2, Kim ordered, search team proceed to hunt down the guardian spirit, everyone else take a rest. The protagonist's group sat down near a tree nearby. I've been watching for a while, so let me get this straight. Kim Seong-woo is the archer. Kim Ha-nool is the mage. Du Sung-vu is the swordsman, and Jun Jae-von is the warrior, right? Then why is the guild called Morning Star? I mean, in English, a morning star is a spiked mace, but nobody in the team uses one. Hearing that, Kim Seong-woo and Jun Jae-von burst out laughing. Kim Seong-woo's face turned bright red and he shouted, "Hey, cut it out!" Du Songvu stepped in to explain Seong-woo chose the name because of you, sir. When you left the cave to get help, he said you were glowing so brightly you looked just like a morning star. Seong-woo turned beet red again and yelled, "I said cut it out already?" Jigu replied cheerfully, "Anyway, please just talk to me like normal. I'm not your guide anymore, you know." Seong-woo then asked, "You're the same age as Sungvu, right? Can I call you Hyung?" Jigu smiled and said, "Of course." As the group was chatting happily, a bunch of tall, intimidating guys swaggered over to start trouble. One said with a sneer, "Wow, times have really changed. I thought you guys came here for a picnic." Jigu looked at Seong-woo and whispered, "Who's that?" He replied, "That's a rank B player named Oh-nam. He belongs to the Shadow Guild and acts as their representative. For this expedition," Jigu asked, "What do they think they're doing?" Seong-woo continued, "Well, you could say they're pretty famous. They're obsessed with power and live by the motto, 'Only the survivors are the adapters.' They also value traditional values and rigid hierarchy above all else. They really pride themselves on loyalty." Then he added bluntly, "To put it simply, they're just a bunch of outdated geezers." The guys continued to provoke them pathetic. "I guess that's all a bunch of rank C's are good for, huh?" Javon lost his cool and growled, "What did you just say?" The guy challenged him again. "I asked, did you guys come here for a picnic? Must be pretty proud of yourselves for getting to join a rank B subjugation team, right? You should be the ones on high alert, but instead, you're just lazing around and running your mouths here. At the very least, you should be more useful than the pack mules." The main group was furious, but tried to hold it in. Seeing no reaction, the guy mocked, "Ugh, bunch of losers, let's go." Seeing Jigu with his head hung low, Seong-woo said, "We're so sorry, Hyung." Jigu felt like he was losing control as a mysterious voice echoed in his head, "Master, please calm yourself. Are you planning to commit murder or something? Keep your emotions in check." Jigu couldn't control himself and thought to himself, "What is this? I already knew this was going to be annoying, but I didn't think it would be this bad. Like some kind of trauma side effect, huh?" Suddenly, a voice spoke up, bringing him back to his senses. "What's going on?" Dong Kim said, "It looks like something is in disarray." "Oh, aren't you looking to interrogate me? As the leader of the subjugation team, I need to know the situation." Jigu got an idea and said, "There's a small issue, but because of that, I actually wanted to ask the leader for a favor." Dong Kim looked at him and replied, "What is it?" Jigu braced himself, stood up, pointed at the tall guys, and declared clearly, "I want to duel the rank B player Oh-nam. After all, it's better to resolve bad blood between team members before the battle starts, right?" Oh-nam looked surprised. "Huh?" People gathered around and started whispering, "What are they going to fight?" Dong Kim, seeing his confidence, asked, "Is that really okay? The gap between rank C and rank B isn't just about levels." Jigu had already considered this and said, "I know. That's why I want to add one more condition. You know, right? The rank C players of Morning Star are all reserve members, while the rank B players of Joker are the main attack force, correct? But practical combat experience matters way more than levels, doesn't it? So if I win, I want the two teams to swap positions." Jigu looked at Seong-woo and continued, "Sorry for not asking you first, but please trust me just this once." Oh-nam laughed. "Hold on. Who do you think you are to decide that you haven't done anything useful for us? So why should I—" Before he could finish, the main character shouted, 500 million. If I win, you get 500 million. That's not a bad deal, is it? Oh-nam's cronies turned to him and whispered, "Really, you'd spend that much money just to shut him up? What am I supposed to do, play dumb with everyone watching us? If that's the case, it's a steal. I mean, there's no way I can lose anyway." Dong Tu Kim stood there deep in thought, knowing the match was coming up soon. As the leader, I have to make sure no unnecessary trouble happens. That is, if what I just sensed wasn't just an emotional reaction. I'll prove it right now. After a moment of consideration, he spoke up. "Fine. As the leader, I agree." As soon as he said it, the two of them stood face to face. Dong Tu Kim set the rules: no weapons allowed, no lethal attacks, and the match ends if one side admits defeat. Pooh, standing on the side, was worried, but the main character, Jigu, gave him a nod. It was his way of saying, "I've got this." He glanced at Ju to check the distance. "Is this distance far enough?" Ju replied, "That's enough. The connection range will keep expanding to help you develop your abilities. Master, so please be careful," the system warned. Oseok Nam sneered openly as he looked at him. "If it ends too quickly, where's the fun in that? All right, bring it on. Jigu stayed cautious. He knew his opponent was a B-rank player, and he likely had plenty of openings. Wait, is that a stance? Looking at his build, he's a typical dealer who relies on raw strength for close combat. Or maybe even though he's B-rank, he's definitely hiding some kind of latent power. But first, I need to close the distance and take the initiative. No need to probe too much. I'll trust in my boosted burst capabilities. Thinking that he lunged forward to attack. Oseoknam's face didn't even flinch. Is he that confident in his defense, or does he have an instant counter-attack skill, he thought as he charged in. Crap, it's too late to pull back my punch now. When he counters, I have to dodge quickly to prepare for the next strike. Thinking that the protagonist threw his fist straight at him, what shocked him was, he didn't dodge at all. With just one hit, he sent the guy flying 100 meters. Oseoknam was left lying on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Everyone watching was left speechless. Finally, Dong-tu Kim shouted, "The winner is the player Kim Jigu!" His group rushed over, excited and constantly marveling. Man, since when did you get this strong? What level are you at now? On the other side, Oseoknam's team ran over to check on their captain. Captain, are you okay? Dong-tu Kim still couldn't believe his eyes. I was just standing there watching, and I couldn't even see the attack clearly. Player Kim Jigu might just become the biggest variable in this raid. Suddenly, a man came running from afar, breathless. Leah leader, the raid search team has returned. At the same time, in the chairman's office on the 43rd floor, Otis was reporting on the status of the raid. So that means an emergency B-rank raid team has been formed? He flipped through the association's list and said, General Manager, the training room in the basement of the association is a domestic portal. Recently, people from the association's staff hospital, even Secretary Heo Sung-hoon's people have been going there. It seems like we've given outside players too many benefits, haven't we? You should explain this a little bit. Back to the protagonist after the fight, his group began the raid. Facing them was a giant monster that was slowly picking off the players one by one. The profession with the highest mortality rate is player. Even if you don't like it, you have to get used to death. But if the predator doesn't even look like a creature of the same species anymore, it would be hard to get used to that kind of death. Dong-tu Kim lunged in to attack first. He swung his sword with all his might toward the monster. The blade cut through the water. A powerful strike slashed the monster's back, making it angrier. It roared. He shouted, commanding the raid team members, "Everyone attack! The captain's strike is the signal," while wounding the guardian with a spell. The strongest of the group members would drive it into a frenzy. Those in the back would step forward, creating an earthen wall in coordination with the shield bearers, all attacking the creature at once. In this way, they would block the guardian's attacks. Everyone would throw the pre-prepared explosive items over the shield wall, while those at a distance would use long-range attacks, a simple but effective strategy. At that point, the beast would be caught in a dilemma, and finally it would be completely eliminated. However, Kim Jigu turned back and warned Seopu to be careful. He instructed him not to rush forward, but to stay back and observe the situation. He asked confusedly why he was giving such instructions because, after all, didn't they already take the main position? Before he could finish, Seopu skidded to a halt. Suddenly, a terrifying sound erupted, and the ground shook violently amidst a cloud of dust. A dark shadow appeared out of nowhere. Dong-tu Kim felt tense. Kim Jigu knew the biggest problem with this strategy. It was that if it failed, everything would spiral out of control. The result was exactly that. Not only was the beast not destroyed, but it had returned even stronger than before. Dong-tu Kim's sword clashed with the creature's blade, and he was immediately thrown back. His teammates saw him fly away and panicked, shouting his name. Dong-tu Kim groaned in pain. He asked his teammate if he could provide support. The teammate replied yes. Dong-tu Kim asked how long it had been. He estimated about 30 minutes had passed. The teammate replied that it hadn't even been 5 minutes yet. Dong-tu Kim praised Captain Dong-tu Kim for being so amazing for holding out against the monster like that. Over here, Dong-tu Kim was focused on the fight. Once he found an opening, he leaped toward the beast. Dong-tu Kim continued to use his hydro slash to attack it. After slashing the monster once, Dong-tu Kim glanced to assess the situation. He frowned, realizing its wounds were healing too fast. Dong-tu Kim immediately alerted his teammates about its regeneration ability. That's exactly why Foz can rival a high-level guardian. He ordered the main squads 1 and 2 to switch positions and the support team to prepare for battle. Everyone followed the orders of Dong-gyu immediately as Shoyun turned and called out to Kim Jigu. He told Jigu that he should also get ready, and Jigu replied, "I understand." After that, he just slowly walked toward Foz and Sungwoo. Seeing Jigu moving toward Foz, screamed a warning, telling Kim Jigu that doing so would be extremely dangerous. Jigu acted as if he didn't hear Sungwoo's warning at all. Just as Jigu stepped very close to Foz, and its blade was about to sweep past his shoulder, unexpectedly Foz's blade couldn't touch him. He smiled because his theory was correct. He had discovered that all players who quickly finished the tutorial didn't know that Foz's attack patterns were exactly like an ordinary orc's. Jigu believed the only difference with Foz was its physique and regeneration ability. Jigu suddenly remembered someone once asking him what he intended to do with $8 million in cash. He had replied that he would use it to pay off his debts and buy some new equipment. At this moment, Kim Jigu had gradually grasped Foz's attack patterns. He was confident he could defeat it, and Jigu deemed this the perfect opportunity. To test the power of his new fused ego, Jigu dashed as fast as lightning, catching Foz off guard before it could even see his figure. Jigu had slashed its body 3 times in a row. His speed was thanks to Hermes, his level 45 equipment with 30 strength, 89 dexterity, 12 endurance, and 40 mana. Movement speed increased by 15%. Additionally, Hermes also had the skills Adorn and Rush with Rush, meaning a gradual speed increase over 5 minutes, reaching maximum speed after 3 minutes. After slashing Foz repeatedly, he looked back at it. It was screaming horribly, and the wounds created by Jigu's sword were constantly tearing open on its body. Seo Yoon and Sungwoo were stunned by this sight, unable to speak, and Dongyu was also frozen, an idea suddenly flashing in his mind to defeat it. Foz Dongju told Jigu that Foz's regeneration rate was abnormally high, so both of them should land one deep strike instead of many shallow ones, advising Jigu to conserve his strength. Jigu wondered if Foz's regeneration had stopped. On Jigu's neck hung a teardrop-shaped stone, which was another piece of his equipment. The tear was level 51 with 19 strength, 25 dexterity, 67, endurance, and 25 mana, possessing skills that could adorn, regenerate mana, and inflict critical wounds. Regenerating mana meant increasing mana recovery, while critical wounds slowed and reduced healing capabilities. After a moment of silence, Foz suddenly roared. It jumped up frantically, looking like it wanted to devour everyone. A player asked in confusion what was wrong with it. The person next to him guessed it had changed its attack pattern, but Jigu silently disagreed, thinking it was just a low-level monster cornered and struggling to survive. He smiled coldly. He jumped up unexpectedly, attacking from behind it. Jigu had predicted all of this, so he was extremely confident using his sword to attack Foz repeatedly, while everyone around could only stare in astonishment. Jigu continued to aim his blade at Foz. His sword swept across its body, and he landed constant, relentless strikes, leaving Foz no time to react. Then he dashed away to carefully observe the creature as it stood motionless for a moment. Jigu decided to give it one more horizontal slash, hitting it right in the eye. He believed that no matter how many levels it gained, an orc would always be an orc. It didn't scare him in the slightest. Finally, before the eyes of all the players, Jigu successfully defeated Foz. Everyone was momentarily stunned that Jigu had taken down Foz entirely on his own. The system announced that Jigu had defeated the low-level demon Foz. Jigu was a bit surprised to learn Foz was a demon, and the system stated the Demon Eater skill had been activated. Everyone was shocked by this news. They all turned their eyes toward Jigu, and the system announced that Foz's arrogance, the very thing that caused its failure, was being absorbed. The fragments of that failure, Foz's arrogance, was being absorbed into Jigu. Foz was destroyed, and the dust and smoke gradually cleared, with Dongyu finally giving orders after being stunned for a moment. He told the injured members to focus on recovery, and those who didn't fight to start collecting gear, also warning them not to let their guard down. Everyone agreed, and Dongyu quietly called Jigu aside, saying he had something personal to discuss, so Kim Jigu followed him to a quiet spot, wondering why Dongyu wanted to talk. Kim wanted to speak with him privately, perhaps because the guard's corpse had vanished, and he also thought Dongyu might blame him for all the spirit stones and items disappearing. But he quickly dismissed those two possibilities because Dongyu had no proof to pin it on him. If that wasn't it, why did Dongyu want to see him alone? Very quickly, he learned the reason. Dongyu simply wanted to invite Jigu to join his guild. Jigu sighed in relief, so he just wanted to recruit him. He told Dongyu that for now he didn't intend to join any guilds. After hearing Jigu's reply, Dongyu's voice sounded regretful, but he smiled, saying he still wanted to keep a good relationship with Jigu, and took out a business card telling him to get in touch whenever he changed his mind. By the time evening arrived, Dongyu thanked the players for their hard work, and Jigu smiled and asked Seoyun if he could ask her something. She agreed, and Jigu asked Seoyun why she didn't join Sungwoo's King Guild, believing she could be completely successful. Outstanding if she joined that. Seoyun smiled and explained that she wanted to achieve everything through her own strength, then turned and asked Jigu what his reason was, noting that she felt Sungwoo would definitely send an invitation. To Seoyun's question, Jigu was a bit pensive before laughing and saying there was nothing special, and just then Jun Sungwoo invited Jigu and Seoyun to dinner. Jigu declined, saying next time, as he had to go home to clean up today. Before leaving, Jigu promised to call Jun Sungwoo's group later. When done, Jigu intended to call Sunghoon. He saw a notification on his screen from O-Thesis telling him to call back after the subjugation. At O-Thesis's house, he mentioned the association president wanted to have a meal with Jigu. As far as Jigu knows, the chairman of the Korea Player Association is a self-made man. But other than that, everything about him is a mystery. Jigu has no idea why he wants to meet him. And to top it off, it's at O-Thesis's place on the 10th floor. Thesis said the chairman wants to cook for Jigu personally, but he's still wondering why the chairman would want to invite him over for dinner. When Thesis arrived at the apartment, he opened the door, walked in, and called out to the chairman. "Hey, old man!" The chairman greeted Thesis back, but when he started making some sarcastic jabs, the chairman told him to shut it. So Thesis asked what was on the menu for tonight. The chairman told Thesis to go set the table. Finally, Jigu got to see the chairman's face. He was a man in his 50s who at first glance radiated the elegance of a successful gentleman. The chairman was complaining non-stop about how Thesis's place looked like a pigsty. Seeing Jigu arrive, he reached out to shake his hand, saying it was a pleasure to meet him. Jigu politely responded, introducing himself as Kim Jigu. Suddenly, he felt an overwhelming aura radiating from the chairman, who introduced himself as Taego. As the chairman of this Korea Player Association, Jigu secretly thought that the heavy pressure coming from Taego was proof enough of why he was the one standing at the top of all those superpowered individuals. O-Thesis advised him to go easy on Jigu. Jigu was surprised to realize that Taego was actually Thesis's father. The meal Taego cooked was lavish, so Jigu tried a bite. Taego mentioned he knew quite a lot about Jigu through Thesis. He remarked that it seemed like Thesis had helped Jigu a lot, which Jigu confirmed Thesis had indeed helped him more than enough. Thesis turned to his father and grumbled, "Just let the guy eat, would you?" Taego feigned innocence, but then suddenly turned serious. He said he wanted to offer Jigu a job. Jigu swallowed the bite he was chewing. Ahem. Asking what kind of job it was, Taego said straight out that his company wanted to hire Jigu. Jigu calmly replied that he had no intention of joining any organization. Taego cut him off, saying that wasn't what he meant at all. He clarified that he wanted Jigu to become a mercenary for the association. Later that night, Jigu returned home. Jigu recalled Thesis's words that although his father could be a bit blunt, he didn't intend to force him. Thesis had also mentioned his father wanted to give Jigu a title, so that he could comfortably receive help from the association. Jigu felt that Taego's offer wasn't bad. After all, Thesis had said as much. He carefully weighed his options before making a decision. He also remembered the CEO of the PU Guild's question from earlier, then thought about the KIN Guild. He mused that while he had been hanging around as a level 1, Zukvu had already become the guild master of one of the top 10, the strongest guilds in Korea. He felt he already owed Zukvu too much. Because of that, he couldn't be a burden to him any longer. He wanted to stand on equal footing. Jigu promised to meet Zukvu in the tower, in another development deep in a forest. An explosion occurred. A player in a mage outfit felt annoyed that the prey had slipped away. A player in iron armor told him to leave it to him to finish it off. The mage player warned that the target was coming. It was a saber-toothed tiger. It charged toward the armored player, who swung his sword in a wide arc to strike it down. Seeing the prey was dead, the mage player asked if they should keep going. The armored player suggested hunting 2 more. Suddenly, they both felt the surroundings growing colder. The mage player remembered that the 26th floor had a climate that was supposed to be hot. The two stopped at the bottom of a hill. Suddenly, the mage player shouted in front of him were prey that had been frozen solid. And not just that, the entire surrounding area was buried in ice and snow. Someone called out, "Guildmaster." He turned to Zukvu to report that they couldn't find the prey he was looking to hunt. Hearing that, Zukvu stood up and told everyone to keep moving. At the MC hall, they were announcing a player of the week from last weekend. The Angela Guild announced they would clear the 81st floor. This caused a global sensation. The Guildmaster of Angela, a candidate for the world's #1 player Sel Nioli, as well as player Yubisin, players who had just appeared on the rankings this past March. They had somewhat proven that Korea seemed to be a nation with powerful players. That was also the reason they had prepared a special event for the high-ranking players. First, the appearance of the living legend, Asura. Even among high-ranking players, the original 5 players, also known as the 5 players, known as the forefathers of all other high-ranking players, didn't know much about Asura either. Kim Jigu asked the person in front of him, "I don't know anything about that person, not even his nationality, his age or his gender." "Actually, the chairman of the Korea Player Association," the guy replied, "is your grandfather too." Facing Jigu, Oticist confirmed the information. Jigu exclaimed that he was truly born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Oticist asked Jigu not to tell anyone because it was classified information, then handed him a ring and told Jigu to take it. Jigu panicked, thinking Oticist wanted to propose to him only to be called an idiot by him. Oticist explained it was an ID item for mercenaries, which would give Jigu the same rights as a director. Oticist also had Sung-hoon follow him as his secretary. Oticist gave Jigu benefits like a high-level player regarding things related to the tower or clearing gates. And every time a mission was completed, Jigu would receive a reward. The association could buy back items Jigu earned during missions without any discounts. Plus, he could turn down any mission he wanted. Jigu exclaimed, "That's incredible!" In New York at the iZone Guild headquarters, Jojo went to the Guildmaster's office to meet iZone CL. As soon as he greeted the Guildmaster, Jojo started coughing like a chicken. iZone asked him what was wrong, but Jojo didn't answer the question. Instead, he pleaded desperately to go to Korea. iZone agreed right away and said he would open a branch in Korea. And he would make Jojo the director so he could do whatever he wanted, even get his revenge. He also granted him number 9. Hearing number 9, Jojo immediately understood it was the number 9 sword. He hissed his thanks to iZone, but little did he know he was just a stepping stone for iZone's revenge. Kim Jigu was being driven away by Sung-hoon. In the car, he was lost in thought about the holy sword. It had become significantly stronger since absorbing Kalyon, but Jigu didn't know how to wield it yet. He asked L, but even though L had awakened his power, "Since your memories are still incomplete, you have no idea why Jigu is asking you again. You said you still don't know how to use the ego fragment we got from Chunky's ego. But you've already absorbed Ferez's ego. How do you feel? Has anything changed?" Ju hadn't answered yet, but Sung-hoon, who was right there, spoke up and asked if Jigu had changed his hairstyle. Jigu laughed it off and replied, "Yeah, I realized it was a bit messy, so I trimmed it a little." Ju assumed Sung-hoon could hear the two of them talking, but Jigu thought, "No way, that's impossible." He asked Ju again about the fragments, but Ju gave that same "I don't know" answer, which made Jigu clearly annoyed, muttering to himself, "What was I expecting from him anyway?" Suddenly remembering he didn't know where he was going, Jigu turned to ask Sung-hoon. Sung-hoon said they were heading to the unique gate in Yosu, but the gate's readings had been fluctuating. It was bouncing between rank F and rank C, and Jigu just needed to clear it. Jigu told Sung-hoon he felt a bit restless because this was his first mission as a mercenary. Sung-hoon said he'd go in with Jigu to gather intel, and suddenly they realized they'd already hit the highway. Jigu only then remembered his young potatoes. Sung-hoon told him that at the Mercenary Association they'd be assigned a code name. When Jigu heard code name, he immediately thought of something like Asura or Demon Lord. Sung-hoon informed him that it had already been decided in this morning's meeting, and Jigu's code name would be the Porter. Jigu didn't look too happy hearing such a ridiculous nickname, but then he thought his kids back home might actually like it. Beside him, Sung-hoon couldn't help but smirk, which made Jigu. Having just calmed himself down, he couldn't help but get ticked off. At the gate, Jigu was still chewing on a piece of fried snack when someone came to greet him, using that lovely Porter nickname, of course. The director of the Players Association in Yosu bowed respectfully to Jigu, which made him feel a bit awkward. He quickly told the man to lift his head. Jigu still wasn't used to this nickname, so he told him to just call him by his name. Sung-hoon, standing nearby, hadn't stopped laughing at Jigu's new title. Jigu was incredibly annoyed by the constant smirking and couldn't help but snap, "Are you finding this funny?" Switching to business, someone explained that this gate appeared a few days ago and is believed to be a unique gate that no one has entered yet. Sung-hoon decided the goal was still just reconnaissance, As planned, he asked about the manpower. A guy said if he requested it, they could assemble a Rank B raid party, and they'd already gathered the necessary equipment in the management office. As soon as Jigu and Sung-hoon were ready, they could leave. Just as Sung-hoon and the others were exchanging information, Jigu walked toward the gate. The two of them frantically called him back, and the others hurried over too. They wanted to hold him back. After all, this was a unique gate, and for Jigu to just walk up like that was reckless. But Jigu didn't care. He just double-checked with L and Ju. Were they absolutely sure? They confirmed it with him. Jigu reached out and touched the gate. Instantly, cracks appeared on it. The people behind him frantically shouted to contact headquarters. They requested support from the nearest guilds. As for Jigu, he realized it really was an ego. The moment his hand touched the gate, a notification popped up accepting the link. At the scene, things were chaotic. Someone asked, "Any word from South Korea yet?" The other end reported they'd be there in 15 minutes. Kim Jigu was standing in front of the gate, hesitating to accept the connection to this gate. Or perhaps it was another ego. Just as Jigu was about to connect, Sung-hoon lunged forward and pulled him away. By the momentum, Jigu was dragged right into Sung-hoon's handsome face. That made even thick-skinned Jigu blush. The guys standing behind them witnessing this hero saves the porter romantic scene were so embarrassed they just froze. After pulling Jigu away from the gate, Sung-hoon took him to a temporary container office. He spoke to Jigu in a not-so-pleasant tone. Jigu knew he was at fault, so he kept quiet. Silence is golden. With that same tone, not sure if he was praising or scolding, Sung-hoon said, "You triggered a gate break this time. Who knows what'll happen next? Are you planning on controlling a whole pack of monsters?" Jigu sheepishly scratched his head, giving a vague answer to move past it. As for what just happened, Jigu was also confused. He asked Sung-hoon what had just occurred. Sung-hoon said the gate had returned to its normal state. Then he asked Jigu if that was a gate break. Jigu wasn't sure. He knew a little bit about what happened, but since it was his first time, he couldn't explain in detail, but it was probably because of Ju's unique skill. Hearing it was Ju's unique skill, Sung-hoon didn't ask further. He handed Jigu a traditional Korean mask. Sung-hoon explained that because there were signs of a gate break, the area was now full of emergency summoned players and the press would be arriving soon. Sung-hoon knew Jigu didn't want to be in the news, so he told him to quickly put on that absurd, funny-looking traditional mask. Jigu didn't mind the mask, but with the lipstick Sung-hoon personally applied, he was absolutely speechless. After an hour of discussion, they decided to let Jigu enter the gate alone. Although there were a few objections, the association handled it. It really shows that the association is the best and mercenaries are the best. Sung-hoon worriedly asked Jigu if he was sure about going in alone. But Jigu was very confident. It was related to his unique ability anyway. He asked Sung-hoon to have everyone wait outside the gate as a precaution. After that, Jigu accepted the link with the gate. He vanished into the gate. Under the full moon, the space was eerily quiet. Kim Jigu had entered the gate alone. Suddenly, he heard a notification, "Checking your worthiness." Kim Jigu didn't understand what worthiness meant here. He remembered before with L and Ju he only had to give a name, but maybe this gate was different. Ju spoke up, feeling insulted, thinking Jigu was making them look cheap. Jigu took off the mask and asked L and Ju, "Is it true that I just need to clear it?" Du isn't sure either, but it agrees with the plan to just wipe everything out first and see what happens. The night space is gloomy and cold, and a lone figure makes Jigu shiver in fear. Io says it can feel a damp, dreary, magical aura, while Du seems quite pleased with this place. Jigu goes to search for the center of the strongest magical energy, but suddenly Du speaks up, telling Jigu it doesn't think they need to do that. Just then, something appears to be heading toward Jigu from ahead, an army of skeletons. Suddenly, Jigu spots a headless knight among the bone soldiers. This is his first time seeing a real-deal headless knight, but he feels like dropping a mini-boss right at the entrance is a bit overkill, a bit too much. Immediately, Jigu enters combat mode, calling for Du and Io to boost his speed. Jigu streaks through the skeleton mob, heading toward the headless knight like a bolt of lightning. He says that usually in a situation like this, people tend to behead the leader first. Du quickly speaks up, saying, "It doesn't even have a head." The moment Jigu swings his sword, the headless knight swings its spear too. Blocking the strike, Jigu eventually finishes off the skeleton army and the headless knight. Standing in the silent graveyard, Du feels like something is very strange. Jigu doesn't quite get it and asks what it means. Du says that fighting the skeleton soldiers is one thing, but even the headless night boss was way too weak compared to the magical power this gate is putting out. Jigu nods in agreement, but still doesn't get what Du is driving at. Suddenly, Jigu's eyes land on a grave placed right in the center. He approaches the tomb and looks at the mark on it. Jigu guesses the real boss will come out of here. Du anxiously calls out for Jigu to be careful. There must be a reason why the headless knight from before was so weak. Suddenly, a strange blue light emanates from the grave. Seeing this, Jigu immediately draws his sword and gets into a combat stance. Appearing before Jigu is a skeleton draped in a cloak. Du speculates that the reason the headless night boss was so weak is because all the magical energy leaking through the gate was concentrated inside this boss monster. The boss monster emits a bizarre sound. Jigu recognizes it something that should only appear in high-level gates or from the 60th floor onwards, a lich. The lich speaks first, asking if Jigu is the one who wants to become its master. Jigu is stunned, not knowing why the lich is pointing at him. He asks again, and by now he realizes what surprised Jigu, because this gatekeeper boss has the voice of the system. When the boss keeps pestering him, Jigu finally yells that he's here to take control of this gate. Then Jigu asks it if this is even a gate. The lich doesn't understand what gate means, but it claims to be the master of these abandoned ruins. While Jigu is still puzzled by the lich's voice, it suddenly moves its finger. Spotting the movement, Jigu quickly calls for Du and Ao to act first. A staff-like object appears in the lich's hand, the kind witches in fairy tales always use. It tells Jigu to prove he is worthy of becoming its master. Magic shoots from the staff toward Jigu. It moves so fast before he can even reach it. Seeing the magical energy like a fireball rushing toward him too quickly to dodge, Jigu can't help but curse under his breath. Then that magical orb explodes. Its power is incredibly formidable. While Jigu is still engulfed in the thick fog and smoke, the lich approaches him. Du anxiously reminds him to be careful. Jigu's gaze turns serious. The arrogant lich laughs. "Is that all you've got?" Simultaneously, it fires countless staves. It says it hasn't even started yet. Jigu, having just been schooled, crouches to the ground as countless rays of light shoot toward him. He draws his sword and deflects them all with a single move. Jigu orders Ao and Du to boost his power. The lich sneers, calling it useless. The countless rays of light haven't stopped. They keep flying toward Jigu, leaving him no room to let his guard down. Suddenly, Du, who has no clue what's going on, gets called out by Jigu to help. Jigu comforts it, saying, "Last time your grenade toss was spot on." Du has a bad feeling and tries to stop him, but it has no choice. Suddenly, Jigu hurls it backward. Then Jigu sprints, takes a leap, and jumps off it. Thanks to Du, amidst its swearing serving as a jumping platform, Jigu can leap far, closing the distance to the lich. He grips Ao in his hand, using every ounce of strength he's had since the day he was born. He intends to take the lich out in one hit. But to his surprise, this guy is tough. Even though he slashes from a different angle, he's still detected, and the lich blocks it just like that. Not only that, but the lich mocks him. "That little bit is still not enough to make you my master." But that's not all. That wasn't Jigu's real move. He spins his sword, slicing straight into the lich's chest. The lich screams in pain, but that's still not enough to destroy it. In a flash, it stands firm and even complains that Ao is annoying. At this moment from the sky, countless rays of light, too many to count, light up the entire area pointed straight at Jigu's head. It makes him want to pay a visit to the lich's ancestors. Du is worried because they won't be able to dodge this. El suggests it will lock them down. It seems determined. Jigu calls for El to move forward. Du on the side is incredibly annoyed at not being called, but Jigu says its attributes aren't suitable for this mission. Du is still very disgruntled. It thinks those dark blades are nothing compared to it. Jigu is determined not to use it because now is not the time to talk about uncertainties. Jigu's eyes change. He notices these dark blades are speeding up. He is about to reach his limit. In this desperate situation, Jigu has no choice but to call for Du. He asks if it's sure. It is confident and firm. As Jigu swings Du out, the system announces that Du is absorbing dark energy. Du has begun to awaken as the Lord of the Dark Blade. Sacrifice something so it can fully awaken. At this moment, Du releases terrifying power. A glowing red light covers the entire sky. The power of Du has now even affected the lich's side. He couldn't wrap his head around how someone as mortal as Jigu could pull that off. He finally acknowledged that Jigu was more than just talk, but he still refused to accept him as his master. So the necromancer initiated the final test. He went all out. The ground cracked open as skeletal hands and long dormant corpses clawed their way to the surface, dragging themselves around and standing in a wobbly, unstable mess. They fused together into a massive humanoid construct lumbering toward Jigu, who was just about to ask Ju about that whole lord business. But they didn't have that kind of time. Standing before Jigu now was a giant living golem with the necromancer perched on its head, controlling every move. The golem threw a punch toward Jigu, and the impact shook the very earth. If that hit connected, this story would be over. The necromancer's strategy was clear. If he was at a disadvantage in terms of attributes, he'd crush Jigu with overwhelming, terrifying weight. He would simply crush him with that terrifying sheer weight. Meanwhile, Jigu commanded Ju and Ao to buff him, and with that surge of power, Jigu leaped over the golem, flying straight at the necromancer, arrogantly asking, "Is this enough to prove my worth?" As Ju and Ao sliced through the creature's bony frame, the necromancer finally conceded, accepting Jigu as his master, while the system announced that the gate had successfully linked. The system prompted Jigu to name the gate, but he was lost in thought, wondering what kind of name would fit. Something that sounds cool and absolutely legendary. Just as he was mulling it over, he noticed something weird about Ju. Ju was laughing like he'd just had a hit of something, cockily telling Jigu that what they just saw was his real power. There was no way he was going to just stand by and watch that holy sword take the spotlight, meaning Ao was stronger than him. This petty rivalry had Jigu worried, wondering what had gotten into him. Jigu called out to him repeatedly, asking if he was going a bit too far. What's wrong with him? Ju seemed to snap out of it, confused about what he'd just done. Just then Ao chimed in, saying Ju was just confused, but when Jigu asked what that meant, Ao was cut off by Ju before he could explain. Ju claimed he had a bit of a headache and needed a rest, and Jigu agreed. Even though he still had plenty of questions, he figured he'd save them for later. After that, Jigu thought about the name for the new gate, and suddenly remembering Brandon, who was fading away, he made his decision. The gate would be named Donhet. Outside, after confirming a gate break was imminent, the association sent agents to help evacuate the civilians to the designated shelters, while 2 agents stood guard. "It's been a while since we've had a gate break, hasn't it?" they chatted. "What rank is this one? I heard it's somewhere between F and C. A unique gate. This is giving me a massive headache." Otis arrived at the scene and immediately pressed Sunghun for the contingency plan. Sunghun replied that he had already notified the nearby guilds. "The White Guild members are on their way," he added. And when asked about the evacuation, Sunghun assured him it was going smoothly with no issues likely to be finished in 30 minutes. But Otis felt that was too slow and demanded it be done in 10 when the boss gives an order. A corporate drone like Sunghun has no choice but to agree. Sunghun then mentioned that the press wasn't being very cooperative. "Some of them are a real pain," Sunghun said, but Otis, having lost his patience, told him to ignore them. If they wanted to go meet their ancestors, that was their problem. Otis was worried about something else. The gate break itself wasn't the main problem with the current forces, including himself. They were more than covered. But if a full-blown gate break actually happened, it meant something terrible had happened to Jigu. Just then, a crack appeared on the gate. The very thing Otis dreaded had happened, and despite his worry and the deep guilt he felt toward Kim Jigu, he had to pick up his weapon and fight. Sunghun noticed Otis's strange expression. He called out but received no response as Otis seemed to lose his mind, charging toward the gate, muttering that he would avenge Jigu with his own 2 hands. He screamed Kim Jigu's name, but suddenly a foot appeared and a voice answered. Kim Jigu appeared safely right in front of him, causing Otis to lose his momentum. When he realized Jigu was standing there in one piece, not missing a limb, Otis couldn't help but curse under his breath before landing hard on the ground in pain. Kim Jigu stood there awkwardly scratching his cheek, confused by the sea of people and unsure of what was going on. Suddenly, a flash of light blinded him as a mob of reporters swarmed Jigu, looking exactly like the swarm of skeletal soldiers from inside the gate. They were snapping pictures and demanding to see his face because he was a special case who had cleared a gate right before it broke, and the constant barrage of interview requests was scaring the hell out of Jigu. Back home, Mr. Tego served dinner and asked about that ego thing, wondering if that was why he was getting so strong so fast. Sunghun felt uneasy, wondering if he should be hearing this. After all, a unique attribute isn't just some random skill, is it? Otis comforted him, saying he brought Sunghun along because he trusted him, otherwise he wouldn't have made him his secretary in the first place. Right. Otis turned to ask Jigu what happened after he connected to the gate. Jigu said since it was his first time, he wasn't entirely sure, but Don had told him that it was balancing everything out and wasn't responding, so he thought something had happened once the gate closed. Otis asked about Ju not responding, and Jigu guessed that maybe it was just pushing past its limits. Jigu explained that even though Ju was quiet, he could still use his abilities, so it should be fine. Mr. Tego sighed, noting that if Jigu's ability to possess gates were ever exposed to the outside world, the whole world is going to lose its mind. The old man reassured him. Don't worry about the reporters. The association has already smoothed things over. The press won't find out about this. Hearing that, Jigu thanked the old man. Just then, Jigu's phone rang. He excused himself to answer it. The person on the other end asked if the person on the TV was Jigu, right? The person on the phone had recognized him by his familiar ring and necklace, but they didn't forget to mock his ridiculous mask. Back at the dining table, Thesis asked Gu and Sung-hoon if they had both received calls from the association as well. At the same time, everyone saw the news article with the headline, "A mysterious hero stops a gate break elsewhere." Su-dung also read the news. Bon appeared behind her to check in, noticing she seemed to be in a good mood. Su-dung gave a beautiful but dangerous smile, saying she had taught her student, the masked reporter, quite well. Most of these reporters are retired players who gather information about the tower, the gates, and the players. Jigu and Thesis were washing dishes together. Thesis felt guilty for not being able to stop the pack of reporters. Jigu understood it wasn't his fault. Thesis felt unlucky, suspecting that a troublemaker had infiltrated the press pack. Jigu didn't understand who the troublemaker was. Thesis explained that it was a retired runner named Hyung Jong-go who held a fairly high rank among runners. Thesis warned Jigu not to get tangled up with him and to be careful if he ever ran into him. Jigu agreed. At the Dongmoon Gate shop, senior manager Kwan said that Jigu was now interested in collecting items, a bad habit as the ego was selfish and power-hungry. Jigu sighed, guessing that Ju would have said the same thing if it were awake. Without Ju's constant noise, Jigu felt quite empty. Elle apologized because it couldn't chat with Jigu, like that loudmouth could. Senior manager Kwan saw Jigu muttering to himself and asked what was wrong. Jigu replied awkwardly. The senior told Jigu he had seen him on the news and that he was pretty famous now. He said he recognized the tear and the helmet and teased Jigu by asking if he needed to pay him an advertising fee. Jigu said that was exactly why he had come. Senior manager Kwan was startled, thinking he was actually going to demand an advertising fee. Jigu said that since things had turned out this way, he didn't think he should stand out anymore. He needed something to help hide his identity. The senior understood that he was looking for a mask. He didn't forget to bash the mask for being so ugly it was offensive, but he didn't have anything like a mask in his shop. Jigu said he wasn't looking for a mask. He explained that the ugly mask wasn't something he had bought. The senior asked what he was looking for. Jigu explained that egos and masks were easy to identify, and for the mask, he just didn't need to wear it anymore. The necklace hadn't caught the media's attention yet, but the problem was the rings. He couldn't be without them, so he was looking for a way to hide them. The senior's tone wasn't very happy. He pointed him toward some gloves gauntlets and told him to take a look. He only had a few, not many. By now, Jigu had successfully managed to bond with the gauntlets after a few failures. But bonding with the tear and the helmet was easier. Jigu guessed it was because his ability to possess egos had increased. Elle agreed that was true. Before, his possession ability was only enough for Elle and Ju, but compared to then, Jigu was much stronger now. Elle quickly corrected itself, saying it didn't mean to imply he was weak back then, but perhaps the egos at the time didn't like the names Jigu had given them. Jigu understood and told Elle not to comfort him. Jigu thought he shouldn't choose any gauntlets with flashy designs. Finally, he picked one up. The senior watched the item he picked and silently complimented his choice. Jigu bonded with the new equipment and named it Oberon. The system notified him that the bond was successful. Jigu could access Oberon's information. The senior asked him what he thought of Oberon. Jigu thought it felt a bit strange, but he was sure he would get used to it. The system displayed Oberon's stats, and he saw that it had perfect options for a gauntlet. He didn't know if he could summon Elle and Ju while wearing Oberon. Most regular gloves would break when he summoned them, so he couldn't use normal ones. Jigu tried summoning Elle and Ju. They appeared on his hands instantly. Seeing this, the senior couldn't help but exclaim that Jigu's weapon looked pretty good. Seeing that Oberon could summon them normally, he checked to see if it could hide his rings. Even though these gauntlets were just jewelry, Jigu tested their transmogrification power, and they turned into a pair of regular gloves. Jigu was satisfied and wanted to use them daily. He asked the senior about the price. The senior told him he didn't need to pay, but in return, if he ever needed him to help with something, would he be able to help him out once? The next day, Jigu was in the lobby of the association looking at the chaotic crowd in front. They were screaming, demanding to know if it was true that they were the association's secret agents. Jigu asked Sung-hoon what was going on. Sung-hoon said the reporters had been bothering them quite a lot lately. After the news from that day spread, they came every single day. They were coming because of the masked player, the person who had caused quite a stir in his first mission. Jigu knew it was because of him, so he offered to stop climbing the tower for a while and go check out some gates, but Sung-hoon told him there was no need. The reporters guessed Jigu was a high-level runner, so they were waiting for him on the higher floors of the tower. But for them it was no problem because the masked runner that the reporters were looking for was only ever on the lower floors. Jigu instantly caught the sarcasm in Sung-hoon's voice. Back at the first floor of the tower, Senior Guan's plea for help echoed in his mind. Jigu figured Senior Guan wouldn't underestimate the value of an item he'd created himself, especially since he took such pride in his work, so his request was likely a tough one. As Jigu stepped into the forest, he suddenly heard a voice ask, "Are you our master?" Startled, Jigu scanned his surroundings but saw no one, so he asked, "Io, did you hear that voice just now?" Io asked what he was talking about. Jigu thought he'd heard someone mention a master. The voice echoed again, "To the one who claims to be our master, call out our name." Jigu asked if Ao could hear it this time. El guessed it was Ju waking up, but Jigu thought not since the voice sounded different and was asking to be named. Jigu suddenly had a hunch it was John Het and looked at the orb in front of him. It felt oddly familiar for some reason, though he couldn't pin down exactly what it was. A sight appeared before his eyes, making him gasp. The orb was reflecting Jigu's own image. Just then the system notified him, "John Het's form is currently undefined. Please determine John Het's form." Io asked with concern if something was wrong, and Jigu replied, "It's nothing." The system prompted him to define the form, which felt a bit different from the last time with Ju. Jigu asked Ao if she knew how to do it. Ao told him to place his hand on the orb and imagine the form he wanted. Jigu did as she said, imagining what he desired as if he were communicating with John Het. He said, "Even though we've only been together for a short time, John Het, you've saved me time and time again, until you perished." He wished for John Het to continue protecting him as before. Jigu wanted John Het by his side to keep him safe. A beam of light flew toward Jigu and transformed into a small button. It looked like Iron Man's activation switch. A cheerful voice rang in Jigu's ear. "Master, I am so happy we can be together again, Master." Jigu noted the phrase, "be together again." He guessed it was indeed John Het. The system notified him, "John Het's ego has inherited its memories." Jigu wondered if this inherited memory was truly the same John Het he knew. John Het happily told him that it was indeed the same John Het, and it was overjoyed to be reunited. Jigu also seemed genuinely happy, quite different from the image he had originally imagined. He had thought it would be more like a silent, stoic knight protecting him, but its voice sounded surprisingly childish. Jigu signaled for it to merge. Io introduced herself to John Het. It remembered her and was also delighted to see her. Jigu realized John Het was merging with him. It wasn't an accessory like El or Ju. This was the result of applying his wish to John Het, inheriting the memories of that name. It also had the original Reflect skill, along with new abilities John Het gained when it functioned as a gate. After checking John Het's status board, Jigu couldn't stop praising it, so he wanted to test its capabilities. Jigu had spent a week climbing the tower while focusing on understanding the states of each ego. Even with the original John Het, the new open/close skill allowed him to open and close a gate. Although it was Jigu's skill, he still couldn't truly step inside, and the monsters within didn't listen to his commands either. Even so, Jigu found the skill incredibly useful because he could trigger a gate outbreak if he wanted to, provided he could fully master the ability. If he could pull that off, Jigu's power would likely surpass anyone else's. Next were Absorb and Dominate skills related to John Het's growth process. Absorb allowed John Het to grow by consuming other gates, and Dominate allowed it to absorb a lower rank gate and take control of it. Reading the description, Jigu understood the basics. John Het told him it only worked on gates he already owned, so it seemed this skill had its limits. Jigu wanted to try it immediately, but perhaps that was a task for later. First, Jigu needed to deal with this massive thing in front of him, the 28th floor guardian, the Great Tiger Swordmaster. Jigu remarked that for the past week he'd only hunted weak monsters, so he wanted a challenge. Jigu gave the order to boost his physical strength and lunged toward the great tiger with a single strike. Jigu smirked, saying this is just enough to warm up. Afterward, he saw the great tiger's claws get slashed twice, drawing enough blood to fill a bucket. The beast howled in pain. Jigu just sneered as the tiger, enraged, swung its claws at him. He quickly leapt away and dodged it. It lived up to its name, the great tiger. It moved agilely, lunging at Jigu and swinging wildly. Jigu, unafraid, countered every strike. When the tiger couldn't take it anymore and tried to corner Jigu to finish him off, Jigu smiled cunningly. He commanded, "Reflect," and light bathed the area. Jigu noted these guardians were quite large, but once he got used to the size, fighting them became easier. He complimented Yanhet's reflect skill for its great utility, and Yanhet was delighted to be praised. After praising it, Jigu promised to feed it soon. The system notified him, "Ju is absorbing the great tiger." The guardian only dropped a single rank 6 crystal. It didn't drop any equipment, which disappointed Jigu, though he thought selling its carcass would still fetch a decent price. He worried about how the association would handle this if he returned to base, and reported it, but Jigu needed to keep his promise. He gave the command to open and tossed the rank 6 crystal into the portal that appeared. Jigu learned something new about Yanhet's abilities. This past week, the system notified him, "Gate received a skill. Monsters inside the gate have been empowered. The crystal can help Yanhet grow by absorbing them." Jigu had discovered Yanhet's potential and familiarized himself with his combination of strength and speed boosts. Even though Ju hadn't woken up yet, its power remained intact. Meanwhile, Io was leveling up steadily. Jigu wondered if he should go straight to the 30th floor. No, he'd decide once he reached the 29th. On the 29th floor, among a group of people in red robes, a guy spoke to the other side, asking, "Don't you know who we are?" The guys in blue opposite them couldn't care less, feeling pretty confident in their own reputation, so the two sides just clashed. Jigu was nearby. He heard the sound of them brawling and realized he should probably go check it out. But Jigu didn't think it was a good idea to just get involved in something like that. On the other side, it looked like the red team was losing. The guy who spoke up earlier was busy cussing out the leader of the blue team. He threatened that if they laid a hand on them, the blue team wouldn't be scared at all, even telling them to hurry up and bring their leader to meet him, claiming he'd already dragged that scumbag over there. Before he could even finish his sentence, Jigu came out of nowhere and slammed his face into the ground with one move. Seeing the blue team leader getting grabbed by the hair like that reminded Jigu of something from the past. It made him lose his cool a bit. He felt like he recognized the guy. Jigu was still wondering why a bunch of ambushers would pick a fight with the plant club when another guy, seeing what just happened, panicked and shouted at his team not to. "Just stand there, there's only one of him." Jigu was radiating a dark aura, struggling to keep his composure. Later, while chatting with Jigu, Du-Dung learned that he had entered the Heavenly Gate, defeated the high-ranking elites inside, and retrieved the divine herb to heal his mother, a turn of events that even Jigu hadn't fully anticipated. Seeing his mother recovered and looking even younger than before, she didn't know whether to be happy or terrified. She then mentioned wanting the divine herb herself, but Jigu told her she was asking for too much. He looked concerned and said, "You've worked so hard for Mom, haven't you?" When his mother apologized to her son, he replied, "It's nothing, Mom. It wasn't that much trouble, really." Early the next morning, Otsid came to the house to talk to Jigu in private. He shyly accepted a thank-you gift from Jigu's mother for looking after him, and afterward they headed to a nearby pub. He asked, "Jigu, tell me, how on earth did you manage to get that divine herb? I had to hold myself back so hard from calling you about it." As he drank, he kept talking, but Kim Jigu wasn't really paying attention. Instead, he asked him straight out, "Are you interested in my mom?" The question made Otsid choke, spraying water all over Jigu's face. Flushing red, he stammered, "What did you say?" Jigu remarked, "Your face is bright red, you know. I've been suspicious for a while now." While wiping his face with a tissue, Jigu said, "I know you've been looking after my mother whenever I'm away. And I know it's not just because she looks younger, though. You were definitely more obvious about it today. Anyway, I'm rooting for you both. If Mom ends up with someone like you, I don't think my dad would mind." Otsid just turned red and stayed silent, then quickly changed the subject. "Let's get back to what we were talking about." Jigu asked him about that matter. "Did you bring the soundproof barrier generator?" Otis replied. "I have it in the car, but what's it for?" Jigu said the story was long and complicated, leaving Otis completely confused. A moment later, Otis flew into a rage, shouting, What those sons of beaches actually did that? Give me their address, I'll strip them down and make them eat raw chicken. Jigu helplessly urged him to calm down. Afterward, he sighed. Thanks for getting so worked up for me, but there's no need to be this angry. I'll take care of those bastards myself. Then Otsid offered some advice. Hey, revenge should come from a place of inner peace. He stood up, pointed a meat-laden chopstick at Jigu and said, Speaking of inner peace, you can't live on an empty stomach, eat your meat. Jigu, having no idea what he was talking about, asked blankly, What are you talking about? Jigu brought up the revenge matter again. I still have another debt to settle. What's the status of the guardian beast on the 4th floor? Otsid informed him that a C-rank subjugation team had been dispatched just yesterday. There are 37 people in total, and 70% of them are C-rank hunters. That's enough manpower to take down a 30th floor guardian beast. So they should be sending word of their success soon. Jigu replied, What a shame, I was hoping to blow off some steam and get some exercise. Meanwhile, in a dark, gloomy forest, a man was running for his life, gasping, I have to report this to the association. That the entire C-rank subjugation team, a massive, ferocious monster loomed behind him, has been completely wiped out. Then only his desperate scream rang out. A voice echoed from his radio. Our current priority is to check on the condition of you and your mother after consuming the divine herb. This isn't something that can be handled at a regular hospital, he continued. But don't worry, Otsid will help you take care of it. Next is about the gold. I've handed over half the proceeds from the divine herb to Chief O as you requested. He looked at Jigu and smiled. He nearly fainted when he heard the news, but I told him it was your wish, so you wouldn't owe him anything anymore, and he accepted it reluctantly. Let's see after taxes and other odds and ends. There's still about 20 million left. About your plan to move the family to a new house, I've scouted a few places north of the Han River. He looked at Jigu and added, Per your family's requirements, I've narrowed down the options, so you just need to make the final decision. Do you have any questions? Jigu was blank for a moment, then said, No, I understand. But why are you the one choosing the house now? We're moving, after all. He took Jigu's phone and said, Is that all you wanted to ask? Per Chief Otsid's orders from today on, I will be your personal assistant. I look forward to working with you. He saved his name in Jigu's phone as Hyo Sung-hoon. Jigu thought, is he always like this? That afternoon at the Dongdaemun area, Hyo Sung-hoon helped Jigu carry a few suitcases. He asked, I've prepared everything according to your instructions, but what are you planning to do with this? That's 8 million in cash. Jigu replied, Some equipment I bought on credit was destroyed, so I'm paying off my debt and buying some new gear. Hyo Sung-hoon wondered, Exactly how much was it? Jigu's answer shocked him. 3.5 million, Jigu thought. That old man is insane for lending me 3.5 million without blinking, but I'm just as crazy for accepting it without a second thought. Looking back, I have no idea what I was thinking, though I did manage to pull it off in the end. As Gwanji Chun was forging a weapon, a child ran in and called out, Grandpa, we have a guest. He wondered, a guest? Hyo Sung-hoon said he'd wait for me upstairs, so I thanked him. Then the manager remarked, It's only been a few months and you don't even recognize me anymore. I greeted him and asked how he was doing. He replied, Of course I'm fine. I received the money you sent through the association, though it was a bit short. I scratched my head and apologized, but Manager Ji-chun continued, I'm just messing with you. Looking at the letter attached, anyone could tell it was essentially a will. I chuckled. Well, I came to pay the rest of it, didn't I? He laughed and replied, Honestly, I didn't think you'd still be alive to come back here. I had already written it off as your funeral money and cleared your debt. If you insist on paying, I'll gladly take it. He looked over my body and asked, So the armor finally died, huh? I told him, yeah, it saved my life. He clasped his hands and sighed. Well, that's what it was made for, so I have no reason to be sad. Still, the life of a piece of armor is pretty tragic. You'll tell me about it, won't you? About its final moments. The next morning, Dujung woke up and saw me and Mom getting ready to head out. She asked where we were going, and I told her I promised to take Mom for a checkup today. She froze, stared at me, and shouted, Did you get taller? I was baffled. What? Back in the fitting room, Sung-hoon chimed in, Kim Jigu, I thought you were a model or something. Why aren't you a celebrity? I said shyly, no, stop it. He pressed on, How did you grow 3 centimeters in one night? And you've got a ton of new muscle. That elixir must be the real deal, huh? Can you give me a bottle? I calmly replied, my sister said the exact same thing. I thought to myself, maybe it doesn't look like much, but it's a huge change. Even though I exercised like a madman, my muscles have already hit their limit. I guess this is what resetting the limit means. Suddenly, Du chimed in. Even so, my master is still a weakling. I told her to shut it. A moment later, Sung-hoon announced the test results starting with endurance. This is comparing you to 25 years ago. He looked back at me with a smirk. You've already broken the world record in the Olympic category. I was confused and asked, why 25 years ago? He put on his coat and continued, what about current standards? I don't really watch the Olympics. Oh, right. Well, Heo Sung-hoon said, you're about a rank 10. I asked if he was looking for a fight. Then he added, but player Kim Jigu, don't be surprised. I exclaimed, what my mana control and laws. Fish rank if you have the potential of a high ranker, he said with absolute certainty. I looked blankly and said, okay. He then remarked that I was way too calm. I replied, I already told you not to be surprised. Heo Sung-hoon got annoyed and said, act a little surprised, will you? I said you're a high ranker. I thought helplessly, it's old news anyway. Moments later, Otisid pushed the door open and asked if I was done. I said yes, then asked, what about my mom? He continued, not only is she perfectly healthy, she's actually stronger than the average person. But the truly amazing thing is, even as a civilian, she can now use items. I jumped and shouted, what? Otisid looked at his phone and said, amazing, right? Well, I'll give you the details later. I came to see you about something else. Why haven't you been hunting lately? I replied, hunting. No, I'm taking a break for now. I realized I was still absorbing the power of the CEO. EO apologized to me, but I told her it was fine. Otisid asked when I planned to start again, and I hesitantly said, maybe in a week. He thought about it and said, then save that time for next week. I asked why, and he continued, we've lost contact with the C-rank conquest team. We're forming a B-rank team to send out next week. I asked, so you mean? He answered, exactly. The level 4 guardian hasn't been captured yet, but that's not the main issue. Otisid's face turned serious. It seems that bastard might be hunting players to grow stronger. My expression darkened. B-rank teams usually have at least 30 members with over 60% being B-ranks. But as for me, our protagonist, my rank even after drinking the elixir was completely non-existent. I ran to the general manager's office frustrated. After hearing my complaints, Otisid said, just do the official rank assessment. Now you don't have to worry about not being able to use equipment. Even if your physical attributes might only be ranked as D, if you include your potential, you'll easily reach B rank. At this point, I slumped onto the table exhausted and muttered, but B rank means I have to be over level 100. The problem is I'm only at level 1. I continued, these ranking criteria are crazy. Do you think this is okay, Chung? Isn't it way too vague to just count potential? Otisid immediately replied, we might call it potential, but your mana capacity and how you use it relate directly to combat skills. Just look at those mutants. Their level doesn't really matter, does it? There's an interesting theory that level isn't actually everything. The increase in stats per level up is the real core factor, especially since players' levels are now a mystery due to security reasons in this current climate. If Kim Jigu goes through an assessment, he'll definitely be the center of attention. I mean, a bloodthirsty guide who couldn't level up suddenly hitting rank B. That would be a huge deal. Hearing this, Jigu just sighed, muttering to himself, I told you not to call me that nickname. And you even added more to it. Oates continued, arms crossed, calmly adding that he was going to cause some controversy regardless. I can't stop the press from calling you a player with the potential to reach high-ranking status. He even asked teasingly, what, you don't like that? Kim Jigu was actually just worried about being tracked by John Gu, as attracting too much attention would be disadvantageous for him. Otisid thought Jigu was being overly cautious, though he still respected his decision. But he also had to admit his own authority was limited. He couldn't just grant Jigu a rank willy-nilly. Jigu looked up a bit surprised to hear him calmly say, just clear your schedule. I thought you already had a plan. Thesis replied, looking surprised. I didn't expect you to refuse like that. I thought for sure you'd do the assessment. In a world where high ranks get treated completely differently, Jigu's refusal really caught Thesis off guard. While Jigu was scratching his head, Thesis had an idea and handed him a list of guilds participating in this raid. He suggested, if you join a guild temporarily, you can participate in the raid. At the very least, I can act as an intermediary to introduce you to them. Jigu looked at the list and replied skeptically, who would actually take in a complete stranger? Besides, if I leave the guild right after the raid ends, that would increase the number of people leaving the guild, and consequently, I'd be hurting their reputation. While pondering the list, Jigu's eyes accidentally stopped on the Morning Star Guild. So Jigu decided to join their team. Just then, Dong-tu Kim, the team leader, was speaking quite formally. I have been appointed as the captain for this team. The Tamer team for this raid. We will depart as soon as we finish roll call. I look forward to working with everyone. All the members present responded enthusiastically. We look forward to working with you too, sir. Then the whole group set off. Kim Jigu walked with Kim Seong-pu, who kept thanking Jigu for helping him get into the C-rank guild. Seong-pu smiled and said, It's nothing, we all owe you our lives. And I feel bad that I can't do more to help you. We're just a C-rank guild here to provide support. Jigu replied modestly, You've already helped me a lot just by saying that. As long as I don't have to be a baggage carrier, I'm happy. If there's an opportunity, I'll definitely join the fight. The two talked back and forth before switching the subject to Captain Dong-tu Kim. I heard he's about to be promoted to A rank, which means he'd become a ranker. Jigu just muttered, Oh, I see, secretly thinking to himself, Is that really so special? I mean, compared to the Demon King or iZone CL? A mysterious voice rang out as if reading his mind. That woman is an exception. As if reading his thoughts, the voice echoed, Why is your standard set so high anyway? While he was lost in thought, Kim Ha-noon ran up from behind, grabbing his arm and exclaiming, Hey, Mr. Guide! You look like you've completely transformed, don't you think? Jigu looked confused. What do you mean? Hearing that everyone around them chimed in curiously. That's true. Did you get plastic surgery or something? Someone else cut in. Hey, that's really rude to ask. Seeing this, Jigu wondered if he had really changed that much. The mysterious voice echoed again. Your aura is completely different now, isn't it? Finally, you look like you might actually leave an impression on others. Jigu turned back and gave a strained smile, explaining, It's not plastic surgery. I think it's because I acquired a specialized skill on the 5th floor. I just grew a little taller. The mysterious voice scoffed. Making excuses, are we? As soon as he finished, someone exclaimed, Wow, I'm so jealous I didn't even know a skill like that existed. I wish I could get a skill like that too. The mysterious voice cursed, Damn, they actually believe him. Jigu quickly shut it up. Shut up. The protagonist's party continued on. Unexpectedly, a B-rank Tamer team had taken notice of them. Now, on the 4th floor of the tower Dong-tu, Kim ordered, Search team proceed to hunt down the guardian spirit, everyone else take a rest. The protagonist's group sat down near a tree nearby. I've been watching for a while, so let me get this straight. Kim Seong-u is the archer. Kim Ha-nool is the mage. Du Sung-vu is the swordsman, and Jun Jae-von is the warrior, right? Then why is the guild called Morning Star? I mean, in English, a morning star is a spiked mace, but nobody in the team uses one. Hearing that, Kim Seong-u and Jun Jae-von burst out laughing. Kim Seong-u's face turned bright red, and he shouted, Hey, cut it out! Du Sung-vu stepped in to explain Seong-u chose the name because of you, sir. When you left the cave to get help, he said you were glowing so brightly you looked just like a morning star. Seong-u turned beet red again and yelled, I said cut it out already? Jigu replied cheerfully, Anyway, please just talk to me like normal. I'm not your guide anymore, you know. Seong-u then asked, You're the same age as Sung-vu, right? Can I call you Hyung? Jigu smiled and said, Of course. As the group was chatting happily, a bunch of tall, intimidating guys swaggered over to start trouble. One said with a sneer, Wow, times have really changed. I thought you guys came here for a picnic. Jigu looked at Seong-u and whispered, Who's that? He replied, That's a rank B player named Oh-nam. He belongs to the Shadow Guild and acts as their representative. For this expedition, Jigu asked, What do they think they're doing? Seong-u continued, Well, you could say they're pretty famous. They're obsessed with power and live by the motto, Only the survivors are the adapters. They also value traditional values and rigid hierarchy above all else. They really pride themselves on loyalty. Then he added bluntly, To put it simply, they're just a bunch of outdated geezers. The guys continued to provoke them pathetic. I guess that's all a bunch of rank Cs are good for, huh? Javon lost his cool and growled, What did you just say? The guy challenged him again. I asked, Did you guys come here for a picnic? Must be pretty proud of yourselves for getting to join a rank B subjugation team, right? You should be the ones on high alert, but instead, you're just lazing around and running your mouths here. At the very least, you should be more useful than the pack mules. The main group was furious, but tried to hold it in. Seeing no reaction, the guy mocked, Ugh, bunch of losers, let's go. Seeing Jigu with his head hung low, Seong-u said, We're so sorry, Hyung. Jigu felt like he was losing control as a mysterious voice echoed in his head, Master. Please calm yourself. Are you planning to commit murder or something? Keep your emotions in check. Jigu couldn't control himself and thought to himself, what is this? I already knew this was going to be annoying, but I didn't think it would be this bad. Like some kind of trauma side effect, huh? Suddenly, a voice spoke up, bringing him back to his senses. What's going on? Dong Kim said, it looks like something is in disarray. Oh, aren't you looking to interrogate me? As the leader of the subjugation team, I need to know the situation. Jigu got an idea and said, there's a small issue, but because of that, I actually wanted to ask the leader for a favor. Dong Kim looked at him and replied, what is it? Jigu braced himself, stood up, pointed at the tall guys and declared clearly, I want to duel the rank B player Onam. After all, it's better to resolve bad blood between team members before the battle starts, right? Onam looked surprised. Huh? People gathered around and started whispering, what are they going to fight? Dong Kim, seeing his confidence, asked, is that really okay? The gap between rank C and rank B isn't just about levels. Jigu had already considered this and said, I know. That's why I want to add one more condition. You know, right? The rank C players of Morning Star are all reserve members, while the rank B players of Joker are the main attack force, correct? But practical combat experience matters way more than levels, doesn't it? So if I win, I want the two teams to swap positions. Jigu looked at Seong-woo and continued, sorry for not asking you first, but please trust me just this once. Oh, Nam laughed. Hold on. Who do you think you are to decide that you haven't done anything useful for us? So why should I... Before he could finish, the main character shouted, 500 million. If I win, you get 500 million. That's not a bad deal, is it? Oh, Nam's cronies turned to him and whispered, really, you'd spend that much money just to shut him up? What am I supposed to do, play dumb with everyone watching us? If that's the case, it's a steal. I mean, there's no way I can lose anyway. Dong Tu Kim stood there deep in thought, knowing the match was coming up soon. As the leader, I have to make sure no unnecessary trouble happens. That is, if what I just sensed wasn't just an emotional reaction. I'll prove it right now. After a moment of consideration, he spoke up. Fine. As the leader, I agree. As soon as he said it, the two of them stood face to face. Dong Tu Kim set the rules, no weapons allowed, no lethal attacks, and the match ends if one side admits defeat. Pooh, standing on the side, was worried, but the main character, Jigu, gave him a nod. It was his way of saying, I've got this. He glanced at Ju to check the distance. Is this distance far enough? Ju replied, that's enough. The connection range will keep expanding to help you develop your abilities. Master, so please be careful, the system warned. Oseok Nam sneered openly as he looked at him. If it ends too quickly, where's the fun in that? All right, bring it on. Jigu stayed cautious. He knew his opponent was a B-rank player, and he likely had plenty of openings. Wait, is that a stance? Looking at his build, he's a typical dealer who relies on raw strength for close combat. Or maybe even though he's B-rank, he's definitely hiding some kind of latent power. But first, I need to close the distance and take the initiative. No need to probe too much. I'll trust in my boosted burst capabilities, thinking that he lunged forward to attack. Oseok Nam's face didn't even flinch. Is he that confident in his defense, or does he have an instant counter-attack skill, he thought as he charged in. Crap, it's too late to pull back my punch now. When he counters, I have to dodge quickly to prepare for the next strike. Thinking that the protagonist threw his fist straight at him, what shocked him was, he didn't dodge at all. With just one hit, he sent the guy flying 100 meters. Oseok Nam was left lying on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Everyone watching was left speechless. Finally, Dong Tu Kim shouted, the winner is the player Kim Jigu! His group rushed over, excited and constantly marveling. Man, since when did you get this strong? What level are you at now? On the other side, Oseok Nam's team ran over to check on their captain. Captain, are you okay? Dong Tu Kim still couldn't believe his eyes. I was just standing there watching, and I couldn't even see the attack clearly. Player Kim Jigu might just become the biggest variable in this raid. Suddenly, a man came running from afar, breathless. Leah leader, the raid search team has returned. At the same time, in the chairman's office on the 43rd floor, Otis was reporting on the status of the raid. So that means an emergency B-rank raid team has been formed? He flipped through the association's list and said, General Manager, the training room in the basement of the association is a domestic portal. Recently, people from the association's staff hospital, even Secretary Heo Sung-hoon's people have been going there. It seems like we've given outside players too many benefits, haven't we? You should explain this a little bit. Back to the protagonist after the fight, his group began the raid. Facing them was a giant monster that was slowly picking off the players one by one. The profession with the highest mortality rate is player. Even if you don't like it, you have to get used to death. But if the predator doesn't even look like a creature of the same species anymore, it would be hard to get used to that kind of death. Dong Tu Kim lunged in to attack first. He swung his sword with all his might toward the monster. The blade cut through the water. A powerful strike slashed the monster's back, making it angrier. It roared. He shouted, commanding the raid team members, "Everyone attack! The captain's strike is the signal," while wounding the guardian with a spell. The strongest of the group members would drive it into a frenzy. Those in the back would step forward, creating an earthen wall in coordination with the shield-bearers, all attacking the creature at once. In this way, they would block the guardian's attacks. Everyone would throw the pre-prepared explosive items over the shield wall, while those at a distance would use long-range attacks, a simple but effective strategy. At that point, the beast would be caught in a dilemma, and finally it would be completely eliminated. However, Kim Jigu turned back and warned Seopu to be careful. He instructed him not to rush forward, but to stay back and observe the situation. He asked confusedly why he was giving such instructions because, after all, didn't they already take the main position? Before he could finish, Seopu skidded to a halt. Suddenly, a terrifying sound erupted, and the ground shook violently amidst a cloud of dust. A dark shadow appeared out of nowhere. Dong Tu Kim felt tense. Kim Jigu knew the biggest problem with this strategy. It was that if it failed, everything would spiral out of control. The result was exactly that. Not only was the beast not destroyed, but it had returned even stronger than before. Dong Tu Kim's sword clashed with the creature's blade, and he was immediately thrown back. His teammates saw him fly away and panicked, shouting his name. Dong Tu Kim groaned in pain. He asked his teammate if he could provide support. The teammate replied yes. Dong Tu Kim asked how long it had been. He estimated about 30 minutes had passed. The teammate replied that it hadn't even been 5 minutes yet. Dong Tu Kim praised Captain Dong Tu Kim for being so amazing for holding out against the monster like that. Over here, Dong Tu Kim was focused on the fight. Once he found an opening, he leaped toward the beast. Dong Tu Kim continued to use his hydro slash to attack it. After slashing the monster once, Dong Tu Kim glanced to assess the situation. He frowned, realizing its wounds were healing too fast. Dong Tu Kim immediately alerted his teammates about its regeneration ability. That's exactly why Foz can rival a high-level guardian. He ordered the main squads 1 and 2 to switch positions and the support team to prepare for battle. Everyone followed the orders of Dong Gyu immediately as Xiaoyun turned and called out to Kim Jigu. He told Jigu that he should also get ready, and Jigu replied, "I understand." After that, he just slowly walked toward Foz and Sungwoo. Seeing Jigu moving toward Foz, screamed a warning, telling Kim Jigu that doing so would be extremely dangerous. Jigu acted as if he didn't hear Sungwoo's warning at all. Just as Jigu stepped very close to Foz, and its blade was about to sweep past his shoulder, unexpectedly Foz's blade couldn't touch him. He smiled because his theory was correct. He had discovered that all players who quickly finished the tutorial didn't know that Foz's attack patterns were exactly like an ordinary orc's. Jigu believed the only difference with Foz was its physique and regeneration ability. Jigu suddenly remembered someone once asking him what he intended to do with $8 million in cash. He had replied that he would use it to pay off his debts and buy some new equipment. At this moment, Kim Jigu had gradually grasped Foz's attack patterns. He was confident he could defeat it, and Jigu deemed this the perfect opportunity. To test the power of his new fused ego, Jigu dashed as fast as lightning, catching Foz off guard before it could even see his figure. Jigu had slashed its body 3 times in a row. His speed was thanks to Hermes, his level 45 equipment with 30 strength, 89 dexterity, 12 endurance, and 40 mana. Movement speed increased by 15%. Additionally, Hermes also had the skills Adorn and Rush with Rush, meaning a gradual speed increase over 5 minutes, reaching maximum speed after 3 minutes. After slashing Foz repeatedly, he looked back at it. It was screaming horribly, and the wounds created by Jigu's sword were constantly tearing open on its body. Xiaoyun and Sungwoo were stunned by this sight, unable to speak, and Dongyu was also frozen, an idea suddenly flashing in his mind to defeat it. Foz Dongju told Jigu that Foz's regeneration rate was abnormally high, so both of them should land 1 deep strike instead of many shallow ones, advising Jigu to conserve his strength. Jigu wondered if Foz's regeneration had stopped. On Jigu's neck hung a teardrop-shaped stone, which was another piece of his equipment. The tear was level 51 with 19 strength, 25 dexterity, 67, endurance, and 25 mana, possessing skills that could adorn, regenerate mana, and inflict critical wounds. Regenerating mana meant increasing mana recovery, while critical wounds slowed and reduced healing capabilities. After a moment of silence, Foz suddenly roared. It jumped up frantically, looking like it wanted to devour everyone. A player asked in confusion what was wrong with it. The person next to him guessed it had changed its attack pattern, but Jigu silently disagreed, thinking it was just a low-level monster cornered and struggling to survive. He smiled coldly. He jumped up unexpectedly, attacking from behind it. Jigu had predicted all of this, so he was extremely confident using his sword to attack Foz repeatedly, while everyone around could only stare in astonishment. Jigu continued to aim his blade at Foz. His sword swept across its body, and he landed constant, relentless strikes, leaving Foz no time to react. Then he dashed away to carefully observe the creature as it stood motionless for a moment. Jigu decided to give it one more horizontal slash, hitting it right in the eye. He believed that no matter how many levels it gained, an orc would always be an orc. It didn't scare him in the slightest. Finally, before the eyes of all the players, Jigu successfully defeated Foz. Everyone was momentarily stunned that Jigu had taken down Foz entirely on his own. The system announced that Jigu had defeated the low-level demon Foz. Jigu was a bit surprised to learn Foz was a demon, and the system stated the Demon Eater skill had been activated. Everyone was shocked by this news. They all turned their eyes toward Jigu, and the system announced that Foz's arrogance, the very thing that caused its failure, was being absorbed. The fragments of that failure, Foz's arrogance, was being absorbed into Jigu. Foz was destroyed, and the dust and smoke gradually cleared, with Dongyu finally giving orders after being stunned for a moment. He told the injured members to focus on recovery, and those who didn't fight to start collecting gear, also warning them not to let their guard down. Everyone agreed, and Dongyu quietly called Jigu aside, saying he had something personal to discuss, so Kim Jigu followed him to a quiet spot, wondering why Dongyu wanted to talk. Kim wanted to speak with him privately, perhaps because the guard's corpse had vanished, and he also thought Dongyu might blame him for all the spirit stones and items disappearing. But he quickly dismissed those two possibilities because Dongyu had no proof to pin it on him. If that wasn't it, why did Dongyu want to see him alone? Very quickly, he learned the reason. Dongyu simply wanted to invite Jigu to join his guild. Jigu sighed in relief, so he just wanted to recruit him. He told Dongyu that for now he didn't intend to join any guilds. After hearing Jigu's reply, Dongyu's voice sounded regretful, but he smiled, saying he still wanted to keep a good relationship with Jigu, and took out a business card telling him to get in touch whenever he changed his mind. By the time evening arrived, Dongyu thanked the players for their hard work, and Jigu smiled and asked Seoyun if he could ask her something. She agreed, and Jigu asked Seoyun why she didn't join Sungwoo's King Guild, believing she could be completely successful. Outstanding if she joined that. Seoyun smiled and explained that she wanted to achieve everything through her own strength, then turned and asked Jigu what his reason was, noting that she felt Sungwoo would definitely send an invitation. To Seoyun's question, Jigu was a bit pensive before laughing and saying there was nothing special, and just then Jun Sungwoo invited Jigu and Seoyun to dinner.